evening, friends. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine waking to the scent of apple blossoms drifting through your Soviet-era apartment window. The distant hum of turbines like a mechanical lullaby beneath the Ukrainian morning. You're standing in your kitchen in Pripyat, 1986, watching steam rise from your morning tea, while outside, children's voices echo across the courtyard, their school uniforms crisp as new banknotes. The Chernobyl plant's cooling towers rise in the distance like concrete clouds, and you think nothing of them. They're as ordinary as breathing. Good thing this isn't your life, because in 12 hours, that ordinary world will cease to exist forever. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see our little community scattered across the globe, each of you settling in for the night at different hours. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning light touches your 9th floor balcony with fingers of gold, and somewhere below, a woman named Nadezhda is watering her roses, humming a tune from her childhood. She doesn't know it yet, but in 36 hours, those roses will be radioactive, and she'll never see them bloom again. This is your life, your last normal day in the atomic city that time forgot. You wake in your 9th floor apartment to May sunlight streaming through cotton curtains your mother-in-law sewed last winter, the fabric still smelling faintly of the Moscow department store where she bought it with her pension money. The clock on your nightstand, a wedding gift from your colleagues at the plant, shows 6:47 a.m. And through the thin walls that are a signature of Soviet construction, you hear the Petrov's baby crying next door, the same colicky wail that's been your alarm clock for the past 3 months. Your feet find the cold linoleum floor, that particular orange-brown pattern that seems to exist in every apartment, from Minsk to Vladivostok, and you pad to the kitchen, where yesterday's tea glass still sits on the counter, a ring of amber staining its bottom. Outside your window, Pripyat stretches in geometric precision, a city drawn with a ruler and protractor, where even the trees seem to grow in approved formations. You can see the kindergarten where your daughter will start next year. She's only 3 now, sleeping in the small room that used to be your study, her breath making tiny clouds against the morning cool. The playground equipment gleams wet with dew, those primary-colored metal structures that every Soviet child knows by heart. The rocket ship climber, the mushroom-shaped shelter, the merry-go-round that screams when it turns. From here you can count 4 of the plant's reactors on the horizon, their squat shapes like giants building blocks against the pale sky. Reactor 4 is running a test today. Your husband mentioned it last night over dinner, his voice casual as he discussed the delayed maintenance schedule, the way the turbines would need to spin down, measuring electrical output during those crucial seconds of inertia. You half listened while cutting your daughter's meat into smaller pieces, your mind already on the errands you need to run today. Picking up milk from the gastronome, stopping by the post office to send your sister's birthday package to Leningrad. The radio in the kitchen crackles to life at 7 sharp. You always leave it on, a habit from your own childhood, when your father would time his morning shave to the news broadcast. Today they're discussing the upcoming May Day celebrations, the parade that will wind through Lenin Avenue, the new amusement park that's finally opening after 2 years of construction. Your daughter has been asking about the Ferris wheel every day for the past month, that yellow giant she can see from her bedroom window. Its gondolas like suspended suns, waiting to lift children into the sky. You pour water into the aluminum kettle, the same model everyone has, purchased from the same store on Kurchatov Street, where you buy everything from light bulbs to winter boots. While it heats, you stand at the window, watching the city wake up. Women in headscarves, walking their dogs along the perfectly maintained paths. Joggers in matching tracksuits, following their morning routes past the statue of Prometheus, stealing fire. An image that will seem grotesquely prophetic in hindsight. The reactor complex sits there, patient and powerful, steam rising from its cooling towers in lazy spirals that dissipate into nothing. The plant is his mistress, you've joked before, though the joke has worn thin over the years. He knows every pipe, every valve, every gauge in his section. He can tell you the temperature of the reactor core from the sound of the turbines, can predict maintenance needs weeks before they appear on any schedule. He's proud of this knowledge, carries it like a medal. And why shouldn't he? The plant powers half of Ukraine, sends electricity humming through wires to light kitchens and warm homes hundreds of kilometers away. You fix his tea the way he likes it. Strong, 2 sugars. In the glass with the silver holder his father used. And he drinks it while reading yesterday's Pravda, the newspaper already old news, but part of his ritual nonetheless. Your daughter's voice drifts from her room, singing to her dolls in that made-up language 3-year-olds speak. And you both pause to listen, sharing one of those wordless moments that make a marriage. At 7:30, he kisses you goodbye, his lips tasting of tea and toothpaste, and heads out to catch the bus that will take him to the plant. Hundreds of men and women make this journey every day, packed into buses that smell of diesel and cigarettes. Their conversations a mix of technical jargon and village gossip. You watch from the window as he joins the stream of workers heading to the bus stop, their paths worn into the grass despite the sidewalks. Because people will always find the shortest route between 2 points. The city below is fully awake now. The shops are opening, their windows displaying the same goods they've had for months. Canned fish, boxed cookies, those peculiar Soviet chocolates wrapped in colourful paper that depicts fairy tales. The hairdresser on the ground floor of your building is already busy, the chemical smell of permanence wafting up through the ventilation system. Children in their school uniforms, brown dresses for girls, blue suits for boys, those red kerchiefs that mark them as young pioneers, stream toward the schools, their voices carrying that particular pitch of childhood excitement that exists in every language. You dress your daughter in her favorite outfit, the one with the embroidered collar that your mother made, and she spins in the hallway mirror, watching her skirt flare out. She wants to go to the playground, always the playground, where she can climb the concrete animals, the elephant with the slide trunk, the crocodile with the tunnel belly, that some long ago designer thought children would enjoy. You promise her later, that eternal parental deflection, and she accepts it with the resignation of someone who's heard it before. This is your morning, unremarkable and routine, precious in its mundanity. You don't know that at this very moment, the plant's night shift is preparing for a test that's already been delayed once, that Xenon 135 is building up in the reactor core like poison in a bloodstream, that in 16 hours, your husband will taste metal on his tongue and know that something has gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. But for now, you're just a woman in a Soviet apartment, spreading butter on black bread for your daughter's breakfast, listening to the radio play the same patriotic songs it plays every morning, watching the sun climb higher over a city that still believes in its own permanence. The reactor hums its familiar tune in the distance, and you hum along without thinking, cutting the bread into neat triangles the way your daughter likes them, arranging them on the plate with the dancing bears that she picked out herself at the store. The bus arrives at 7:42, 3 minutes late as always, and you watch your husband disappear into its crowded interior through the kitchen window, his broad shoulders visible for just a moment before the doors wheeze shut. The vehicle pulls away in a cloud of black exhaust that hangs in the morning air like an omen nobody's reading. Down in the courtyard, your neighbor Svetlana is beating a rug over the metal frame designated for that purpose. The rhythmic thwack, 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 creating a percussion that echoes off the building walls. Her son Mikhail works the same shift as your husband, in the turbine hall, where the real muscle of the plant lives. Those massive spinning giants that transform nuclear heat into the electricity that lights 10 million homes. Your daughter has discovered she can make her spoon stick to her nose if she breathes. Inside the plant, your husband is changing into his work clothes in the locker room that smells perpetually of industrial soap and cigarette smoke. The familiar routines of the morning shift, checking the assignment board, signing the logbook with the pen that's attached by a string because someone always walks off with the pens, nodding to Igor, who works the control panels, avoiding Dmitri, who will talk your ear off about his son's hockey team if you give him half a chance. The badge reader beeps as he passes through, that electronic chirp that measures his exposure, adding each day's dose to a running total that someone, somewhere, is supposedly monitoring. The bus he takes is not just any bus, but one of the special fleet that serves only the plant. The seats reupholstered in that particular green vinyl that doesn't show stains. The windows tinted against the summer sun that can turn the interior into an oven. The route passes through the pine forest, those tall Scots pines that were here before the plant, before the city, before any of this was even imagined. Sometimes deer cross the road and the driver has to brake hard, sending everyone lurching forward, cursing and laughing in equal measure. The conversations on these morning rides follow predictable patterns. Someone's always building a dacha, adding a room, digging a well. Someone else just got back from vacation in Sochi, where the Black Sea was warm as soup, and the beaches were packed with pale bodies turning pink in the subtropical sun. The older workers complain about the younger ones. They don't know what real work is, while the younger ones roll their eyes and discuss football scores from last night's match. Your husband usually reads during these rides, one of those technical journals that arrive from Moscow every month, pages full of diagrams and equations that might as well be hieroglyphics to anyone not in the field. But this morning he's not reading. He's thinking about the tests scheduled for today, running through the procedures in his mind like a pianist practicing scales. They've done similar tests before. It's not complicated, really. Just a matter of measuring electrical output as the turbine spins down, seeing if that rotational inertia can power the cooling pumps long enough for the diesel generators to kick in. 40 seconds, maybe 60, that's all they need. It's a safety test, ironically enough, designed to prevent the very thing it will cause. The plant appears through the pine trees like a concrete cathedral, those massive rectangular blocks that house unimaginable power. The parking lot is already filling up. Ladas and Moskviches, and the occasional Volga for the senior staff, all parked in neat rows according to some unwritten hierarchy everyone understands. The cooling towers release their perpetual clouds, white against the blue sky, and the morning sun catches the moisture, creating brief rainbows that nobody stops to notice anymore. Inside the plant, the hallways are painted that institutional green that exists nowhere in nature. The floors polished to a shine that squeaks under rubber-soled shoes. The control room for Reactor 4 is a monument to switches and dials, hundreds of them, each with its own purpose and position. The night shift is still at their stations, eyes red from 12 hours of monitoring gauges that mostly never change, drinking tea from glasses that have left ring marks on every available surface. The handover between shifts is a ritual as formal as a wedding. The night supervisor reads from the log, noting everything from minor pressure fluctuations to the fact that the coffee maker in the break room is broken again. Your husband's colleague, Yuri, makes notes in his small notebook. He's compulsive about documentation. has notebooks going back years, every shift recorded in his cramped handwriting. Could write the history of this place from these, he often says, patting his chest pocket where the current notebook lives. Meanwhile, you're back at the apartment, making beds with the military precision your mother taught you. Hospital corners, smooth as glass, not a wrinkle to be seen. The morning light has shifted, coming through the windows at that angle that shows every speck of dust floating in the air like tiny planets in their own solar systems. The radio is playing Kalinka, that old folk song that everyone knows, and you find yourself moving to its rhythm as you work, a little dance between the bedroom and the hallway. The phone rings. It's your friend Marina, calling to confirm tomorrow's plans. You're supposed to go to Kiev for shopping, a girls' day out, leaving the kids with their fathers. She's excited about a new store that supposedly has Italian shoes, real leather, not the synthetic stuff that falls apart after one winter. You make appropriate sounds of enthusiasm, though privately, you think Italian shoes are an extravagance when your daughter needs new school clothes. But Marina has no children, works as an engineer at the plant herself, can afford small luxuries that you carefully budget for. Through the window, you can see the amusement park in the distance, its bright colors almost obscene against the utilitarian architecture surrounding it. The Ferris wheel stands motionless, waiting for its inaugural ride in 5 days. Workers are there now, tiny figures testing the mechanisms, running safety checks, making sure everything is perfect for the May Day opening. Your daughter will be able to see it from up there, the whole city spread out like a map. The river, the plant, maybe even the village where your grandmother still lives, 20 kilometers away, where life moves at a different speed entirely. Your husband is now at his station, checking pressure readings, temperature gauges, flow rates, all the vital signs of a nuclear reactor that's about to undergo what should be a routine test. The power is being reduced gradually, stepping down from 3,200 megawatts thermal toward the 700 they need for the test. Everything is normal, everything is routine, everything is going according to plan. The only unusual thing is the delay from last night. The test was supposed to happen then, but Kiev needed the power, so they waited. No big deal, happens all the time. The grid's demands always take precedence. In the turbine hall, Mikhail, Svetlana's son from your building, is checking bearings, listening for any sounds that don't belong. The turbines are massive, each one the size of a small building, spinning at speeds that would tear lesser machines apart. But these are Soviet engineering at its finest, built to last generations, over-engineered to the point of absurdity. The sound they make is almost musical if you listen long enough. A deep thrumming that you feel in your bones more than hear with your ears. It's nearly noon now. You're at the market, picking through potatoes, looking for ones without too many eyes, when you run into Ludmila Ignatenko. Her husband Vasily is a firefighter, stationed at the plant's own fire brigade. Yes, nuclear plants have their own firefighters, something that seemed entirely reasonable until it suddenly wasn't. She's buying fish for dinner, the frozen kind that comes from who knows where, all identical silver rectangles in their ice glazing. She mentions that Vasily's on duty tonight, and she's planning to watch the new movie at the cultural center, some romance that everyone's talking about. You chat about nothing important, the weather, the May Day preparations, whether the new grocery store really will have bananas like everyone says. These conversations are the mortar that holds communities together, the daily exchanges that weave lives into a shared existence. Neither of you mentions the plant, though both your husbands spend their days in its shadow. It's just there, like the river, like the forest, like the sky, a fact of life too fundamental to discuss. The control room at 2 p.m. is a symphony of mechanical sounds. The click of switches, the hum of ventilation, the scratch of pens on logbooks. And underneath it all, that deep vibration that comes from the reactor itself, like the heartbeat of some slumbering giant. Your husband stands before panel number 4, watching the power gradually decrease according to plan. Each adjustment recorded in the log, with the precise handwriting he learned at the Polytechnic Institute. The numbers tell a story only he and his colleagues can read. 2,800 megawatts, 2,500, 2,200, counting down toward the test parameters like a very slow countdown to New Year's Eve. Leonid Toptonov is here too, just 25 years old, 3 months into his position as senior reactor control engineer. He has that earnestness young engineers carry, that belief that the world can be understood through equations and properly followed procedures. His wife is pregnant with their first child. He mentioned it in the break room last week, his face glowing with the kind of pride that makes older men remember their own youth. He double-checks every reading, triple-checks every calculation, his fingers dancing over the control switches with the delicate precision of a concert pianist. The test is nothing special, really. They've explained it dozens of times to anyone who asks. It's about those crucial seconds when the main power fails, before the diesel generators reach full capacity. Can the spinning turbine's inertia provide enough electricity to keep the cooling pumps running? It's the kind of question that keeps safety engineers awake at night. The kind of redundancy that separates Soviet nuclear engineering from catastrophe. They've tried this test before, actually, but the results were inconclusive. Today, they'll get definitive answers. Alexander Akimov, the shift supervisor, reviews the test parameters one more time. He's a careful man, the kind who checks his apartment door 3 times before leaving, who keeps emergency supplies in his car even for short trips. His wife teases him about it, calls him her worried bear, but here in the control room, that carefulness is an asset. He notices that power reduction is happening faster than expected, makes a note in the margin of his log. Not alarming, just worth watching. At home, you're helping your daughter with her afternoon nap, though she insists she's not tired, doesn't need naps anymore, is a big girl now. But her eyelids are heavy, and eventually she surrenders to sleep, her small hand clutching the stuffed rabbit that's been loved into shapelessness. You stand in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, that ancient parental instinct to confirm continued existence. The apartment is quiet except for the refrigerator's periodic cycling and the muffled sounds of life from other apartments. Someone's practicing piano, badly, the same passage over and over. Deputy Chief Engineer Anatoly Dyatlov arrives in the control room at 3 p.m., bringing with him that particular energy that makes younger engineers straighten their spines and older ones suppress sighs. He's brilliant, everyone agrees on that, but brilliance and wisdom aren't always roommates. He's supervised dozens of tests, knows the reactor's capabilities better than anyone, has that confidence that comes from years of being right more often than wrong. He checks the power levels, frowns at the rate of reduction, but says nothing yet. The phone rings in your apartment. It's your mother, calling from her village as she does every Thursday. The connection is poor, her voice fading in and out like a radio station just out of range. She's worried about the late frost last week, what it might have done to her apple trees. You reassure her, though you know nothing about apple trees. Haven't lived in the village since you were 17 and left for university. She asks about your husband, your daughter, whether you're eating enough. The eternal maternal questions that transcend geography and time. Back in the control room, something unexpected happens. At 12:28 a.m., wait, no, that's not until tonight. Right now, it's mid-afternoon, and the power reduction is continuing normally. Everything going according to plan. Your husband is monitoring coolant flow, watching the numbers that tell him the reactor's temperature at various points, like taking the pulse of a massive patient. The xenon 135 levels are building up, as expected. That's a normal part of power reduction. The xenon acting like a damper on the nuclear reaction, requiring careful adjustment of control rods to maintain stability. The afternoon shift at the plant includes lunch in the canteen, where the food is actually quite good, subsidized by the state, prepared by cooks who've been there since the plant opened. Today it's borscht and black bread, kotleti with buckwheat, compote made from dried fruits that tastes like liquid summer. The conversations flow around work topics. Someone's complaining about new regulations from Moscow. Someone else is explaining a clever solution to a maintenance problem. And, at the corner table, the chess players are engaged in their eternal tournament. Your husband sits with his usual group, the men he's worked with for years now. They have the easy camaraderie of shared experience, can communicate in half sentences and meaningful looks. Igor mentions his son got accepted to university in Moscow, engineering of course, following in his father's footsteps. Sergei's trying to get tickets for the Dynamo Kiev match next month, promises to get extras if he can manage it. These are men who trust each other with their lives every day, though they'd never phrase it that dramatically. You're at the playground now, pushing your daughter on the swing while she demands, "Higher, higher," with the fearlessness of someone who hasn't yet learned that falling hurts. Other mothers stand in small clusters, watching their children while discussing the eternal topics. Whose child is walking first, talking first? Who's having trouble with toilet training? The plant wives form their own subset, united by the particular anxieties of nuclear work. Not that anyone discusses those anxieties directly, but they're there in the subtext, in the way conversations pause when someone mentions a minor incident at work. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows across the concrete playground. The Ferris wheel in the distance catches the light, its yellow gondolas glowing like lanterns. A group of teenagers has gathered near the cultural center, smoking cigarettes they're too young for, trying on adulthood like an ill-fitting coat. One of them has a guitar, is playing Beatles songs, quietly, because Western music is still technically frowned upon, though everyone listens to it anyway on tapes copied and recopied, until the sound quality degrades to whispers. In Reactor 4's control room, the power continues to drop. They're at 1,600 megawatts now, still well above the test parameters, but getting closer. The control rods slide in and out of the core with mechanical precision, each movement calculated to maintain the delicate balance of the chain reaction. It's like conducting an orchestra, where every instrument is potentially lethal, where a wrong note doesn't just sound bad, but could theoretically cause real problems. Though of course, there are so many safety systems, so many redundancies, that real problems are essentially impossible. Dyatlov is getting impatient. The test was supposed to happen last night, and the delay has thrown off his carefully planned schedule. He wants to get this done, get the data they need, move on to the next item on an endless list of procedures and protocols that keep the plant running safely and efficiently. He's not reckless. No one survives this long in nuclear power by being reckless. But he has the confidence of someone who's seen every possible variation, knows exactly how far the reactor can be pushed. Your daughter has made a friend at the playground, a boy about her age, with a runny nose and grass stains on his knees. They're engaged in some elaborate game involving the slide and imaginary monsters, the rules of which seem to change every 30 seconds. You recognize his mother. She works at the grocery store, always slips an extra candy into your bag when you shop there. You chat while watching your children play, and she mentions her husband is working the night shift tonight, won't be home until morning. The industrial clock in the control room shows 4 p.m. Your husband notes the time in his log, along with current readings. Reactor power at 1,200 megawatts thermal, still descending. Everything normal, everything routine. In about 8 hours, he'll write his last normal entry, but right now, he's thinking about dinner, wondering what you're making, whether there will be time to help his daughter with the puzzle they started yesterday. A map of the Soviet Union, 500 pieces. They've got everything except Kazakhstan finished. The reactor makes a sound, not alarming, just different, like when your car engine coughs on a cold morning. Everyone in the control room notices, but no one comments. The gauges show nothing unusual. These machines have personalities, quirks, moods almost. After years of working with them, You learn their languages, know which sounds matter and which are just mechanical complaints about another day's hard work. This sound doesn't matter. It's nothing. It's probably nothing. The workers' canteen at 5 p.m. is filling with the evening shift. Men and women in various shades of blue work clothes, their radiation badges clipped to pockets, like small plastic consciences. Your husband sits with his usual table by the window, where you can see the cooling pond stretching out like a small sea, its surface disturbed only by the movements of the enormous catfish that thrive in its warm waters. Fish that have grown to mythical proportions, fed by the bread crusts workers toss from this very window. The talk today is about the May Day celebration. Who's marching? Who's got duty and will miss it? Victor at the next table is complaining about his daughter's school performance. She wants to be an artist, of all things, when she could be an engineer. Artists don't build the future, he says, and everyone nods. Though privately, several of them think art might be exactly what the future needs. The borscht is particularly good today, thick with beets from the collective farm 20 kilometers away. The sour cream fresh enough that it still tastes of morning. Your husband mentions the test to his colleague Pavel, how they'll need to maintain the reactor at low power for a while before beginning. Pavel worked at the Leningrad plant before this, has stories about the early days of Soviet nuclear power, when they were still figuring things out, when every day brought new discoveries about what these managed chain reactions could do. We're not pioneers anymore, he says, stirring sugar into his tea. Now we're just technicians. There's something wistful in his voice, a longing for those days when nuclear energy felt like humanity's next great leap, rather than just another industrial process. Meanwhile, your daughter is at the kitchen table, working on her drawing with the concentration of a master artist. She's drawing your family, but everyone is a circle with stick arms and legs. And she's given you purple hair because purple is her favorite color this week. You're preparing dinner, chicken tobacco, the way your Georgian neighbor taught you, pressed flat and fried until the skin crackles. The smell fills the apartment, mingles with the scent of lilacs from the bouquet you bought at the market, their purple blooms already starting to drop petals on the tablecloth. The phone rings. It's the building administrator, calling about the meeting tomorrow night. Something about new regulations for balcony gardens, whether residents can hang laundry on Sundays, the minutiae of communal living that requires constant negotiation. You half listen while watching your daughter add a sun to her drawing, a yellow circle with lines radiating out like the spokes of a wheel, like the Ferris wheel she's obsessed with. She asks when Daddy's coming home, and you tell her soon, though with the test tonight, you know it might be later than usual. In the control room, the power has dropped to 720 megawatts, almost at the target of 700. Toptonov is at the controls, his young face serious as he makes tiny adjustments, his hands steady despite the responsibility. Your husband watches the temperature readings, notes a slight variation in one sector, but nothing outside normal parameters. The xenon poisoning is significant now. That's expected when you reduce power. The xenon-135 absorbing neutrons, dampening the reaction like a wet blanket on a fire. They'll need to withdraw more control rods to maintain criticality. Dyatlov checks his watch, calculates how long they'll need to hold at low power before the test can begin. The electrical grid dispatcher calls. Kiev can release them from supplying power now. They're free to proceed with the test whenever ready. It's like getting permission to leave work early, that little lift of freedom from external obligations. He tells the room to prepare for the final power reduction, to take them down to test levels. At 6 p.m., you call your daughter to wash her hands for dinner. She's reluctant to leave her drawing, has added a dog now. You don't have a dog, but in her world you do. A big yellow one that looks more like a bear. Your husband should be home soon for dinner, unless the test runs late. You set his place anyway, the plate warming in the oven, the way your mother taught you to keep a meal ready for a working man. The sun is setting now, painting Pripyat in shades of gold and orange. From your kitchen window, you can see the plant clearly, its structures dark against the glowing sky. Steam rises from the cooling towers, turned to gold thread by the sunset. And for a moment, it's actually beautiful. This marriage of nature and technology, this monument to human ambition. Somewhere in that complex, your husband is reading gauges, recording numbers, doing the work that keeps the lights burning in 1 million homes. The building's hallways fill with the sounds of evening, doors opening and closing, television news broadcasts bleeding through thin walls, children being called in from play. The elderly woman on the second floor is cooking cabbage again. The smell permeates everything. A vegetable ghost haunting the stairwells. Your daughter wrinkles her nose as you pass it on your way to take out the garbage. Makes an exaggerated gagging sound that makes you laugh despite yourself. Back in the control room, something goes wrong. As they reduce power towards 700 megawatts, Toptonov makes an adjustment, or perhaps the automatic control system malfunctions. The stories will never quite agree. And suddenly, the power plummets. Not to 700, not to 500, but all the way down to 30 megawatts. The reactor has essentially stalled, poisoned by its own xenon, barely maintaining a chain reaction at all. The room erupts in controlled chaos. This isn't dangerous, not yet, but it's a serious problem. The test requires 700 megawatts minimum. At 30, they might as well have shut down the reactor entirely. Dyatlov is furious, demands to know what happened, who's responsible. Toptonov is pale, his hands shaking slightly as he works to recover power, withdrawing control rods to overcome the xenon poisoning. Your husband checks his instruments, sees temperatures dropping throughout the core. The reactor is struggling, like an engine trying to start on a cold morning. You're giving your daughter a bath now. She's playing with a plastic boat, making engine sounds as it navigates the dangerous waters between her knees. Her hair forms dark ribbons in the water, and you pour cupfuls over her head while she squeals about water in her eyes, though you're being careful to avoid them. The bathroom is warm and steamy, the mirror fogged, your daughter's cheeks pink from the heat. They manage to bring the power back up to 200 megawatts. Not enough for the test as designed, but Dyatlov decides it will have to do. They've been preparing for hours. The moment has been delayed since yesterday, and he's determined to proceed. Akimov objects. This is outside the test parameters, outside safe operating procedures. But Dyatlov has decades of experience, has supervised dozens of tests, knows the reactor's capabilities. We'll proceed, he says, and his word is final. Your daughter is in her pajamas now, the ones with the little bears that she insists aren't babyish, even though you bought them in the toddler section. You're reading her a story about Baba Yaga, the witch with the chicken leg house, and she keeps interrupting to ask questions. Why does the house have chicken legs? Where does Baba Yaga buy her groceries? Does she have a toilet in that house? The questions that children ask, that make you see familiar stories through new eyes. Control rods continue to withdraw from the core. They need to overcome the xenon poisoning, need to maintain even this minimal power level. By 11 p.m., only 8 control rods remain fully inserted in the core. The technical specifications require a minimum of 15 for safe operation. But that's a conservative number, a safety margin built on other safety margins. Surely 8 is enough for a simple test, a brief experiment that will be over in minutes. Your husband calls at 10:30 to say he'll be late. The test is taking longer than expected. His voice sounds tired but normal, maybe a little frustrated. You tell him dinner is in the oven. You'll leave the hallway light on for him. Your daughter is already asleep, clutching her rabbit, dreaming whatever dreams 3-year-olds dream. Probably involving Ferris wheels and yellow dogs and grandmothers made of chicken bones. You kiss him goodnight through the phone. That little ritual you've maintained since courtship, and he says he'll try not to wake you when he comes in, though you both know you'll wake anyway. Your sleep attuned to his presence after all these years. Your husband feels the explosion before he hears it, a compression wave that pushes through his chest like a giant's hand. Then the sound arrives. Not one explosion, but two in rapid succession. The first, a deep bass note that you feel in your bones. The second, sharper, metallic, like God striking an enormous bell with a steel hammer. The lights fail. Emergency batteries kick in, bathing everything in hellish red. Through the window, he sees something that shouldn't exist. Blocks of graphite glowing cherry red in the darkness, scattered across the ground like coals from a Titan's fireplace. Akimov is shouting orders, his voice barely audible over the alarms. Check the pumps, check the water levels, check the core pressure. But the instruments are lying now, showing readings that make no sense. Water levels where there can't be water, pressure where the pipes no longer exist. Nobody wants to speak the thought that's forming in everyone's mind, the impossible thought. The reactor core has exploded. It can't have. Everyone knows RBMK reactors can't explode. It's physically impossible. The safety systems make it impossible. Yet here they are, in the middle of the impossible. You're fully awake now, though you don't know why. That subtle vibration has passed, but something feels wrong in the quality of the darkness, the weight of the air. You pad to your daughter's room. She's still asleep, one arm flung above her head in that boneless way children sleep, completely trusting in the safety of her world. You adjust her blanket, tuck her rabbit closer, then move to the kitchen window. The reactor isn't there anymore. Where the lid should be, that 2,000-ton concrete and steel disc they call a laner, there's only sky. The core is open to the night, a volcano of nuclear fire shooting a pillar of ionized gas straight up, carrying with it the poisonous breath of split atoms. Iodine-131, cesium-137, strontium-90, plutonium-239. The entire periodic table of horrors that should have stayed locked in fuel assemblies for 1,000 years. Back in your apartment, you notice a taste in your mouth. Metallic, like you've been sucking on coins. It's faint but persistent, and you wonder if you're getting sick, if your daughter's cold is catching. You get a glass of water, but the taste remains. Outside you hear sirens now. Not unusual in a city of 50,000, but there are many of them, and they're all heading toward the plant. Vasily Ignatenko and his firefighting unit arrive at the plant at 1:28 a.m., 5 minutes after the explosion. He sees what looks like regular fire on the roof of the turbine hall. He's fought industrial fires before, knows how to handle burning oil and electrical fires. He doesn't know that the black chunks scattered across the roof are graphite from the reactor core, each one pumping out enough radiation to kill a man in minutes. He doesn't know that the pretty sparkles in the air aren't embers but ionized gas. That the warmth on his face isn't from ordinary fire but from gamma rays stripping electrons from atoms. At 1:23 a.m., you're deep in sleep when something shifts in the air. A vibration more felt than heard, like distant thunder that makes the water glass on your nightstand tremble. Your eyes open to darkness, that middle-of-the-night blackness where shapes are suggestions and every sound amplifies. The building creaks, but buildings always creak. especially Soviet buildings with their optimistic engineering and pessimistic construction. You reach for your husband's side of the bed from habit. Find it empty and cold. Remember he's at the plant for the test. In the control room of Unit 4, your husband sees something impossible. The massive control panel, with its hundreds of lights and gauges, suddenly transforms into a Christmas tree of warnings. Red lights bloom across the board like spreading blood. Alarms shriek in discord. And then, the floor jumps. Not shakes, not trembles, but jumps, like the earth itself hiccuped. The reinforced concrete walls, designed to withstand earthquakes and airplane crashes, crack with sounds like breaking bones. Leonid Toptanov's hand is still on the AZ5 button, the emergency shutdown that should have saved them all. His face in the red emergency lighting looks like a classical painting of horror. Mouth open, eyes wide. Understanding arriving in the space between heartbeats. The button was supposed to insert all control rods, stop the reaction, make everything safe. Instead, the power gauge spikes beyond comprehension. The needle slams to the stop at 33,000 megawatts and keeps going, the instrument unable to measure the catastrophe unfolding in the core.
The plant is 3 kilometers away, but you can see it clearly. There's a glow that shouldn't be there. An orange light painting the bottom of the steam clouds. Not steam clouds, smoke clouds. Something is burning at the plant. Your first thought isn't radiation or disaster, but wondering if your husband is safe, if he's dealing with some industrial accident, if he'll be even later coming home. You consider calling but know better. During an emergency, the last thing they need is worried wives tying up the phone lines. Dyatlov is running through the halls now, his usual imperious manner replaced by something raw and desperate. He needs to see, needs to understand what's happened. The dosimeters are screaming, maxing out at 3.6 Röntgen per hour. Not great, not terrible, as someone will later say with tragic understatement. The real levels are hundreds of times higher, but their instruments can't measure that high, because nobody imagined they'd need to. Your husband and 3 others are ordered to lower the control rods manually. Surely the explosion was just the hydrogen in the emergency tank. Surely the core is intact, just needs the control rods fully inserted. They run through corridors, already thick with dust and smoke, their shoes crunching on debris that wasn't there an hour ago. The door to the reactor hall is gone, blown off its hinges, and through the opening, they see into the mouth of hell itself. Your husband is back in the control room now, his face pale, reporting what they've seen to Akimov. But Akimov can't accept it. The core can't be gone. It's impossible. He orders them to pump water into the core, all the water they can manage. Your husband wants to object. You can't pump water into something that isn't there, but he follows orders, works with the others to redirect every available pump, sending thousands of gallons of water per minute into the inferno. The water doesn't reach the core because there is no core. It flashes to radioactive steam and joins the pillar of death rising into the night sky. At 2 a.m., Dyatlov finally goes outside to see for himself. He walks around the building, his feet crunching on graphite chunks that his mind refuses to recognize. The radiation is stripping the water from his eyes, making them burn and tear. His skin feels sunburned already, that peculiar nuclear tan that comes from beta radiation. He sees the crater where the reactor should be, sees the fire burning with colors that shouldn't exist. Not orange or red, but a deep cherry blue. The color of Cherenkov radiation, when particles move faster than light through water. You can't sleep. Something is wrong. Not just the distant sirens, not just the taste in your mouth, but something fundamental, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. You stand at your window watching the plant, and now you can definitely see fire. And the smoke is glowing from beneath. You think about calling your mother in the village, but it's the middle of the night, and what would you say? There's a fire at the plant. She'd only worry. The firefighters are on the roof now, Vasily and his unit, dragging hoses up ladders that are already growing warm to the touch. The tar is melting under their boots, sticking with each step, and the smoke has a strange sweetness to it, like burnt sugar mixed with ozone. They spray water on the burning chunks, not knowing they're spraying water on naked nuclear fuel. That each drop that hits creates a puff of radioactive steam they're breathing deep into their lungs. Your husband's colleague, Igor, suddenly doubles over and vomits, a violent retching that seems to come from nowhere. Then another man does the same. The control room fills with the acid smell of stomach contents, and everyone pretends not to notice that there's blood mixed in. These are the first signs of acute radiation syndrome. Though nobody wants to name it yet, they tell themselves it's the stress, the smoke, maybe something from dinner.
Rukhanov, the plant director, arrives at 2:30 a.m., his hair still bearing the impression of his pillow. He takes one look at the chaos in the control room, at Dyatlov's burned face, at the readings that make no sense, and makes the decision that will haunt him forever. He reports to Moscow that there's been an accident, a serious one, but the reactor is intact. He can't bring himself to say the words that would end his career, possibly his life. The reactor has exploded. Your daughter cries out in her sleep. Not a nightmare, just one of those mysterious sounds children make in the deep of night. You go to her, smooth her hair, whisper that everything's okay. Mama's here. Go back to sleep. She murmurs something about the yellow dog from her drawing and settles back into dreams. You stay there a moment, watching her breathe, feeling an unease you can't name, a mother's instinct that something in the world has shifted. At the plant, they're evacuating non-essential personnel now. Your husband should leave. His shift ended hours ago, but he stays, working with the pumps, trying to cool what can't be cooled. His skin is starting to redden, what they'll later call nuclear sunburn, and he can taste metal so strongly it's like chewing aluminium foil. But he thinks of you, of your daughter, of the apartment with the orange-brown linoleum and the view of the Ferris wheel, and he keeps working because that's what Soviet men do. They work until the job is done, or they can't work anymore. By 3 a.m., the taste of metal in your mouth has intensified to the point where you're actively trying to scrape it off your tongue with your teeth. You stand at the bathroom sink, gargling with water, spitting, gargling again, but it clings like a memory of copper coins and battery acid. Through the bathroom window, smaller than the kitchen one, facing a different direction, you can see lights. Too many lights for this hour, moving along the road to the plant like a stream of yellow eyes. Your husband's hands are shaking now as he tries to write in the logbook. The pen keeps slipping, his fingers don't seem to work right, and when he looks at what he's written, the letters swim on the page like drunken insects. Igor has vomited 3 more times, and now he's sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, skin the color of boiled lobster. They've sent him to the medical unit, but he refuses to go. Says he needs to help secure the pumps. His voice slurred like he's been drinking, though everyone knows Igor hasn't touched vodka since his son was born. Pripyat starts to wake, not naturally, not with the gradual lightening that brings a city to life, but with sharp sounds. Apartment doors slamming, voices in the hallways, the squeal of car tires as someone drives too fast through the courtyard. Your upstairs neighbor is pacing. You can hear her heels clicking back and forth, a metronomic measurement of anxiety. Her husband works at the plant too, in the machine hall, and you wonder if she knows something you don't. The firefighters on the roof are suffering now, though they don't understand why. Vasily Ignatenko feels like he has the worst sunburn of his life, his face swelling, his lips cracking and bleeding. When he tries to pick up a chunk of burning graphite with his hands, it doesn't look that hot. Why does it feel like his hands are on fire? The pain shoots up his arms like lightning.
His commander is yelling at them to get down, get off the roof. But there's still fire to fight, still duty to fulfill. In Moscow, 400 miles away, a phone rings in a Kremlin office. The duty officer takes notes as Burhanov reports. An explosion in the turbine hall, a fire, but the reactor is being cooled. The situation is under control. The words nuclear accident are not used. The duty officer makes a note to inform the relevant ministers in the morning. No need to wake anyone for an industrial accident, even a serious one. This decision will cost lives, though the duty officer will never know their names. Your husband watches through the control room window as dawn approaches, though it's hard to tell dawn from the glow of the open reactor. Pieces of fuel assemblies are scattered across the ground like pickup sticks dropped by a giant child. He recognizes them by their shape, their distinctive geometry, and his mind performs calculations automatically. Each one contains about 200 kilograms of uranium dioxide, enriched to 2% uranium-235. The math tells him what his eyes refuse to accept. Tons of nuclear fuel are lying in the open air, oxidizing, releasing their poison into the sky. At 4 a.m. you make tea, your hands performing the familiar ritual while your mind races. Should you wake your daughter? Pack a bag? But where would you go? And surely if there was real danger, someone would say something, make an announcement, tell people what to do. This is the Soviet Union. There's always someone in charge, always a plan, always a procedure. You add extra sugar to your tea, hoping sweetness will overpower the metal taste. But it only makes a sickly combination that turns your stomach. The plant's management is meeting now in a bunker beneath the administrative building, arguing about what to tell the world, what to tell the workers, what to tell the sleeping city 3 kilometers away. Dyatlov insists the core is intact. It must be intact. They just can't see it through the smoke and debris. Others aren't so sure. Someone mentions evacuation, and the word hangs in the air like a curse. Evacuate 50,000 people. On whose authority? For what reason? Because of an industrial accident that's already under control? Your daughter wakes earlier than usual, complaining that her throat hurts. You feel her forehead, no fever, and give her warm milk with honey, the universal mother's remedy. She wants to know why you're already dressed, why you're awake so early. You tell her mama couldn't sleep. Sometimes that happens. Would she like to watch the sunrise? Together you stand at the window, and she points at the unusual clouds coming from the plant. How they're lit from below like sunset clouds, except it's morning. More firefighters arrive, not just from the plant, but from Pripyat, from the surrounding districts. They don't know about radiation. Nobody's told them this is anything more than a bad industrial fire. They see their colleagues coming down from the roof, faces red and swollen, and assume it's from the heat. Someone jokes that Vasily looks like he's been on vacation at the Black Sea, got too much sun. Vasily tries to laugh but vomits instead. And now there's definitely blood. Bright red against the concrete. Your husband is ordered to check the cooling pond pumps to make sure water continues flowing to what everyone insists on calling the core, even though he's seen with his own eyes that there is no core. He walks through hallways ankle deep in water, radioactive water, though the dosimeters can't measure how radioactive because they're all maxed out. Their needles pinned at the highest reading, like speedometers in a race car. The phone rings in your apartment. It's Marina, your friend who was supposed to go shopping with you in Kiev today. Her voice is strange, tight. She says she's heard there was some kind of accident at the plant. Do you know anything? You tell her about the fire, the sirens, the metal taste. She's quiet for a long moment, then says, maybe you should keep your daughter inside today, just to be safe. The way she says it makes your stomach clench. By 5 a.m., the sun is definitely rising, though it's hard to separate natural light from the glow of ionization. Birds are singing. That's the strange thing, the obscene thing almost, that birds still sing. that nature continues its morning routine while atoms split and reform in combinations that haven't existed since the Earth was young. Your husband, if he could see outside, would notice that the birds seem confused, some flying in circles, others falling from the sky mid-flight, their navigation systems scrambled by radiation. The hospital is filling up now. Firefighters, plant workers, the first curious civilians who got too close to see what all the fuss was about. The symptoms are all the same: nausea, vomiting, that terrible sunburn that seems to come from inside, skin that feels too tight for their bodies. The hospital has iodine tablets. Someone remembered that iodine can help with radiation, though nobody's quite sure how much to give or if it's already too late. Your husband finally leaves the plant at 6 a.m., his shift long over, his body running on adrenaline and duty. He doesn't go home. He knows what he's been exposed to, knows he shouldn't go near you or your daughter. Instead, he goes to the hospital, where they take one look at him and assign him a bed. He wants to call you but doesn't know what to say. How do you tell your wife you've been swimming in invisible fire? How do you explain that the very air he's breathing is poison? You're making breakfast now, trying to maintain normalcy. Your daughter wants pancakes. It's Friday, and Friday is pancake day. You mix the batter, heat the pan, perform the ritual of ordinary life while extraordinary death blooms 3 kilometers away. The pancakes taste like metal. Everything tastes like metal. But your daughter doesn't seem to notice. Covers hers with sour cream and jam. Makes a face with the toppings. 2 jam eyes and a sour cream smile. Saturday morning arrives, wearing a mask of normalcy that doesn't quite fit. By 7 a.m., children are already playing in the courtyards of Pripyat, their voices carrying that high, bright quality of weekend excitement. Your daughter watches them from the window, pressing her nose against the glass until it fogs with her breath, drawing shapes in the condensation with her finger. A sun, a flower, something that might be a cat, or possibly a nuclear reactor. It's hard to tell with 3-year-old art. You haven't heard from your husband since yesterday afternoon. The hospital phone lines are busy. You've tried 6 times, each attempt meeting the same rapid busy signal that means the system is overloaded. This isn't entirely unusual. Soviet phone systems are notoriously unreliable, but combined with the metal taste that won't leave your mouth and the smoke still rising from the plant, unusual is starting to feel like a permanent condition. The streets below are busier than normal for a Saturday. Military vehicles rumble past, their green canvas covers hiding whatever they're carrying. Men in uniforms you don't recognize, not regular army, something else, walk in groups, their faces hidden behind gas masks that make them look like insects evolved for some future war. But the strangest thing is how normal everyone else is acting. Mrs. Kozlova is hanging laundry on her balcony. Her husband is washing his larder in the courtyard. The teenagers are playing football in the square. Your daughter is restless, wants to go outside, wants to go to the playground. Wants with the insistence of a child who doesn't understand why today should be different from any other Saturday. You tell her to wait. Mama needs to clean first, needs to make lunch, needs to... You don't know what you need, except information that isn't coming. The radio plays the same programs as always. Morning exercises, news about wheat production, a children's story about a brave little locomotive. At the plant, your husband lies in a hospital bed that's already becoming too small for his swelling body. His skin has turned a deep red purple, like the worst sunburn imaginable. And when the nurse tries to insert an IV, his veins seem to retreat from the needle, collapsing in on themselves. He's lucid, terribly lucid, can feel every cell in his body screaming its tiny death. But when he tries to speak, his tongue is too swollen, his throat too raw. He thinks of you, of your daughter's drawing still on the refrigerator, of the dinner still waiting in the oven. The rumors start spreading through Pripyat like radiation itself, invisible, persistent, impossible to contain. Someone's cousin who works at the hospital says they're treating dozens of plant workers. Someone else heard that Moscow has sent specialists, nuclear medicine doctors with equipment no one's seen before. The word radiation starts appearing in conversations, whispered like a curse word, like something that might make it real if said too loudly. You decide to go to the market. You need milk, bread, something normal to do with your hands. You dress your daughter in long sleeves, despite the warm morning, some instinct making you cover as much of her skin as possible. The market is crowded, more crowded than usual, as if everyone has the same need for the ritual of normal shopping. But the conversations are different. Instead of complaining about prices or discussing recipes, people are trading information. Who's sick? Who's missing? What they've heard from relatives in other cities. The milk seller, a woman who's been there every Saturday for 3 years, leans close when you pay. "My husband delivers to the plant," she whispers. "He says don't drink the milk for a few days." The cows. She doesn't finish, but her eyes say everything. You look at the bottle in your hand, white and innocent looking, and quietly put it back. Your daughter asks why, and you tell her the milk is too old today. We'll get some next week. Back at the apartment, you find yourself washing everything. The floors, the walls, the windows. It's purposeless but necessary, as if you could scrub away whatever's in the air. Your daughter helps, or tries to, pushing a rag around with more enthusiasm than skill, singing the cleanup song from her kindergarten. Outside, you notice more people doing the same thing. Washing balconies, washing windows, washing cars that will never be clean again. The announcement comes at 2 p.m., crackling through the building's speaker system with the tinny authority of official pronouncements. It's not about the plant, not directly. Instead, it's about a temporary increase in background radiation. Nothing serious, but residents are advised to close windows, stay indoors if possible, give children iodine tablets as a precaution. The voice is calm, almost bored, as if announcing a change in the bus schedule. You don't have iodine tablets. Nobody told you to have iodine tablets. Why would you have iodine tablets? You're a teacher. Your husband works at a nuclear plant that's safer than safe, that has so many backup systems it could practically run itself. Iodine tablets were for war, for bombs, for things that happened in American movies, not for Saturday afternoons in the most advanced city in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. The knock at your door makes you jump. It's Svetlana from downstairs, holding a small bottle. "Iodine," she says, "from the medical clinic. Mikhail got them. Her son, who works at the plant, who's probably in the same hospital as your husband, though neither of you will say it." She shows you how to mix it with water, how much to give your daughter. The liquid is brown, looks like tea, and your daughter makes a face, but drinks it when you tell her it's special medicine to keep her strong. By evening, the city has taken on a surreal quality. The sun sets through the smoke from the plant, turning everything a deep orange red, like looking at the world through colored glass. The metal taste is so strong now you've given up trying to eat. Everything tastes like batteries, like blood, like fear. Your daughter picks at her dinner, says her tummy hurts, and you let her leave the table without finishing. A violation of normal rules that would have seemed important yesterday. The evacuated plant workers are arriving at the hospital in waves now, brought in buses with covered windows. Your husband watches from his bed as they're brought in. Men he knows, has worked with for years. Their faces swollen beyond recognition. Their bodies failing in ways the medical textbooks never quite described. Acute radiation syndrome, the doctors are calling it now, though they whisper the words as if saying them quietly might make them less true. You try the hospital again at 9 p.m. This time someone answers, a harried-sounding nurse who takes your husband's name, tells you to wait. The wait stretches. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Finally, a different voice, a doctor. Your husband is stable, he says, under observation. No visitors allowed. When you ask when he can come home, there's a pause so long you think the connection has been lost. We'll call you, the doctor says finally, and hangs up before you can ask anything else. Your daughter can't sleep. She keeps saying the air tastes funny. Her throat hurts, her tummy hurts. Everything hurts in that vague way children complain when something's wrong, but they don't have words for it. You lie beside her in her small bed, singing the lullabies your grandmother sang, the ones about sleeping forests and peaceful rivers, trying not to think about how the forests aren't sleeping and the rivers aren't peaceful. Not anymore. Maybe not ever again. At midnight, you stand at your window one more time. The plant glows in the distance. Not the familiar industrial lighting, but something else. Something wrong. You can see vehicles moving, helicopters hovering like metal dragonflies, their searchlights sweeping across the damaged building. It looks like war footage, like those grainy films of bombed cities they show on Victory Day. Sunday morning, April 27th, dawns bright and clear. One of those perfect spring days that makes poets write about renewal and makes everyone else think about barbecues. From your window, you watch the city wake up as if yesterday never happened. Children are already in the playgrounds. Old men have claimed their usual benches for chess. Someone is having a wedding. You can see the white dress, the photographer, the relatives throwing rice. The Ferris wheel stands motionless against the blue sky. Yellow gondolas like a child's toy left in the yard. Your daughter sees you looking and tugs your nightgown. "Today?" she asks, hope bright in her eyes. "Can we ride it today?" You smooth her hair, tell her, "Not today, little one," and she accepts this with a sigh that seems too old for her 3 years. She's learning that "not today" might mean "not ever," though neither of you knows it yet. The phone rings at 8 a.m. It's your mother from the village. Word has reached even there, 20 kilometers away, carried on winds both literal and metaphorical. She wants you to come home, bring the baby, stay for a few days until whatever's happening is over. You're tempted, so tempted, but you can't leave without your husband, can't leave without knowing. You tell her everything's fine, the authorities have it under control. You'll visit next weekend, maybe. Outside, you notice something odd. The dogs aren't barking. Pripyat always has a soundtrack of dog barks, pets, strays, the half-wild ones that live at the city's edges. But today, they're silent. And when you do see one, it's lying in whatever shade it can find, panting despite the mild morning, its eyes dull and confused. The birds too seem wrong, flying into windows, sitting on the ground when they should be in trees, their internal compasses spinning wildly in the electromagnetic chaos. You dress your daughter in her warmest clothes despite the spring weather, that same instinct that makes animals huddle before storms. She protests, "It's hot, Mama!" But you insist, buttoning every button, pulling her socks up high. You're not going outside, you tell her, but somehow having her dressed properly feels like protection, like those layers of cotton and wool could stop whatever's in the air. The building's speaker system crackles to life at 9 a.m. with another announcement. Residents are advised to remain calm.
The situation at the plant is under control. As a precaution, merely a precaution, windows should remain closed, children should stay indoors, and any vegetables from gardens should be thoroughly washed before consuming. The voice is different from yesterday, more official, more urgent despite its attempts at calm. Your neighbor from across the hall knocks, asking if you have any iodine left. Her children are older, teenagers who roll their eyes at their mother's concern but take the medicine anyway. She tells you her husband heard from his brother who works at the city council that they're bringing in buses. Buses for what? You ask. She shrugs, but her eyes are frightened. Just buses. Lots of them. By noon, the buses are visible from your window. Not just a few, not just dozens, but hundreds, maybe more than 1,000, lined up along the roads like yellow and white beads on a string. They're empty, waiting. Their drivers standing in groups, smoking, checking watches. The sight is more frightening than the explosion, than the taste of metal, than the silent dogs. Buses mean leaving. Buses mean this isn't ending. You pack without deciding to pack. Your hands move independently, folding clothes into a suitcase you haven't used since your honeymoon. Practical things, worn clothes, medicines, your daughter's favorite toy, the photo album from your wedding, your husband's good watch that his father gave him. You're not leaving, you tell yourself, just being prepared, just in case. The suitcase sits by the door like an accusation. The television, which has been showing normal Sunday programming, a concert, a nature documentary, cartoons for children, suddenly cuts to a news bulletin. An expressionless man reads from a paper. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. One of the reactor units is damaged. Measures are being taken. The situation is under control. Commission has been established. It's the first official acknowledgement, 40 hours after the explosion, and its brevity makes it more terrifying than any detailed explanation could be. Your daughter is playing with her dolls, making them have tea parties, their plastic faces smiling at nothing. She makes them talk to each other. Would you like sugar? Yes, please, 3 spoons. The tea tastes funny today. Everything tastes funny. You realize she's incorporating what she's heard into her play, processing the strangeness the way children do, through imagination and repetition. At 1 p.m., you try the hospital again. This time they tell you your husband has been transferred. Where? They can't say, or won't say. The distinction doesn't matter. You hang up and stand holding the silent receiver, listening to the dial tone like it might suddenly reveal secrets. Transferred could mean so many things. It could mean he's better. It could mean Moscow, where they have special hospitals. It could mean... You don't let yourself think what else it could mean. The loudspeakers haven't stopped talking for an hour now, their tinny voices echoing through the courtyards with increasing urgency. Please proceed to your designated evacuation point. Buses are waiting. This is a temporary measure. 3 days maximum. Your daughter has caught the nervous energy, keeps asking, "Where are we going? Where's Papa? Can I bring my drawing?" You let her pack her own small bag. The rabbit, of course. 3 mismatched socks. A book she can't read yet. The plastic boat from her bath. Your apartment has never felt more like home than in these last minutes before leaving it. The afternoon sun slants through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes that dance in the air. Radioactive dust now, though it looks the same as always. The laundry you hung yesterday is still on the balcony, your husband's work shirts flapping like surrender flags. Should you bring them in? Does it matter? In 3 days, will any of this matter? Mrs. Petrov from next door is in the hallway, crying. Her husband tells her it's just 3 days. Stop being dramatic.
but his hands shake as he locks their door. Their baby is quiet. Too quiet. That exhausted silence that follows prolonged crying. Other doors open and close along the corridor. Each click of a lock another small goodbye. Nobody says the word forever, but it hangs in the air thicker than radiation. The walk to the buses feels like a funeral procession in reverse. Everyone dressed in their best clothes, because who knows who they'll meet, where they'll stay, what impression they'll need to make. Your daughter rides on your shoulders, her weight familiar and comforting, her small hands tangled in your hair. She waves at the abandoned playground, says, "Bye-bye, swings," with the casual confidence of someone who truly believes in returns. The buses stretch for blocks, their engines idling, filling the air with diesel fumes that almost overpower the metal taste. Soldiers with clipboards direct traffic, their young faces carefully neutral. But you catch one looking at your daughter with such sadness that you have to look away. They're boys, really, conscripts probably, who joined the army to see the world, and instead are seeing the end of one. You're assigned to bus number 847. The number burns itself into your memory, though you don't know why it matters. The seats are cracked vinyl, patched with tape, and the floor is gritty with the sand and dirt of 1,000 previous journeys. But this isn't 1,000 previous journeys. This is the last journey, the only journey. The journey that will divide your life into before and after. Your daughter gets a window seat, presses her nose against the glass to watch Pripyat pass by. There's the store where you buy her shoes, the cafe where you sometimes get ice cream on Sundays, the clinic where she got her vaccinations. She provides commentary like a tiny tour guide. That's where Misha fell and broke his tooth. That's where the mean dog lives. That's where Papa works. You look at the plant, see helicopters hovering over it now like mechanical vultures, and wonder where Papa is, if he's watching these buses leave, if he knows you're on one. An old woman across the aisle clutches a canary in a cage, the bird silent and molting, losing yellow feathers that drift to the floor like radioactive snow. She whispers to it in Ukrainian, promises it will sing again when they get home. Her husband stares straight ahead, his hands folded over a shopping bag that contains, you can see, a few cans of food, and what looks like every photograph they own. The bus fills slowly. Families squeeze together, strangers pressed thigh to thigh, children on laps, bags stuffed under seats and in overhead racks. The smell is overwhelming. Fear sweat and cologne, mothballs from clothes pulled from deep closets, the sour breath of people who haven't eaten because everything tastes like metal. Someone's brought garlic, strings of it, because their grandmother said garlic protects against poison, and the sharp smell makes your empty stomach clench. At 4 p.m. the buses begin to move. All at once, like a synchronized dance, hundreds of vehicles pulling away from curbs, forming lines, beginning the exodus. Your daughter waves frantically at everything. The buildings, the trees, a cat sitting on a fence, the Ferris wheel that gets smaller and smaller until it's just a yellow dot. Then, nothing. "When are we coming back?" she asks, and you say, 3 days, baby. Thursday. We'll be back Thursday. The woman behind you is telling her teenage son about Chernobyl, before it was Chernobyl, when it was just a village where her grandmother lived, where they grew the best cucumbers in Ukraine. "It means wormwood," she says. "In the Bible, wormwood is the star that falls to earth and poisons the water." Her son, earbuds in, nods without listening. But you hear every word, feel them settle in your stomach like stones. The buses pass through the city limits, past the sign that says, "Thank you for visiting Pripyat," in cheerful blue letters. Someone laughs, harsh and bitter, at the irony. Thank you for visiting. Come again soon. Don't forget to write. The forest takes over now. Those tall pines that have stood for centuries, that will absorb radiation into their needles and bark and roots, that will turn red and die in the coming weeks, creating a dead zone that will be called the Red Forest.
Your daughter falls asleep against your shoulder, her breath warm on your neck, her weight increasing as she relaxes into dreams. You hope she's dreaming of before, of playgrounds and papa and pancakes on Friday mornings. You stroke her hair, note absently that it needs cutting, wonder where you'll find someone to cut it, if Soviet hairdressers in whatever city you're going to will know how to handle hair this fine, this particular shade of brown that matches your husband's exactly. The buses stop at a checkpoint. Soldiers with devices that click like angry insects wave them over passengers, the clicking increasing to a roar near certain people who are quietly directed to different buses. The old woman's canary is dead, you notice, a small yellow comma at the bottom of its cage. She doesn't seem to have noticed, still whispers to it about going home, about the millet she'll buy at the market, about the sunny spot by the window where its cage usually sits. Through the window, you see other buses on parallel roads, all heading the same direction. Away. It's biblical, this exodus. Except instead of seeking the promised land, you're fleeing the poisoned one. Someone starts singing quietly, an old Ukrainian song about leaving home, and others join in, their voices creating a harmony that makes your throat tight with unshed tears. Your daughter stirs, but doesn't wake, her face peaceful in a way that breaks your heart. The sun is setting now, painting everything gold. The buses, the forest, the faces of your fellow refugees. That's what you are now, refugees. Though the word sits strange in your mind. Refugees are people in news reports, people from wars, from other countries, other catastrophes. They're not Soviet citizens with engineering degrees and apartment keys and library cards. They're not you.
At the reception center, a school gymnasium commandeered for the crisis, you're processed like packages. Name, age, address in Pripyat, occupation, health status, any unusual symptoms. The woman asking questions doesn't look at you, just writes your life in abbreviated marks on a form that will be filed somewhere. Evidence that you existed, that you were evacuated, that you were saved. They assign you to temporary housing, a hotel room in Kiev, 2 beds, a sink, a view of a brick wall. It's clean and anonymous and nothing like home. Your daughter explores it with delight. A new adventure, bouncing on the beds, playing with the telephone that doesn't work, investigating every drawer and cupboard as if treasure might be hidden there. But you sit on the bed and feel the weight of loss settling over you like a lead blanket. Your husband, vanished into the medical system. Your home, locked and abandoned. Your life, measured now in before and after. 3 days, they said. You look at the calendar on the wall, still showing March, nobody's bothered to change it, and wonder what day it will be when you realize 3 days has become forever.
The loudspeakers haven't stopped talking for an hour now, their tinny voices echoing through the courtyards with increasing urgency. Please proceed to your designated evacuation point. Buses are waiting. This is a temporary measure, 3 days maximum. Your daughter has caught the nervous energy, keeps asking, where are we going? Where's Papa? Can I bring my drawing? You let her pack her own small bag. The rabbit, of course. 3 mismatched socks. A book she can't read yet. The plastic boat from her bath. Your apartment has never felt more like home than in these last minutes before leaving it. The afternoon sun slants through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes that dance in the air. Radioactive dust now, though it looks the same as always.
The laundry you hung yesterday is still on the balcony. Your husband's work shirts flapping like surrender flags. Should you bring them in? Does it matter? In 3 days, will any of this matter? Mrs. Petrov from next door is in the hallway, crying. Her husband tells her it's just 3 days. Stop being dramatic. But his hands shake as he locks their door. Their baby is quiet. Too quiet. That exhausted silence that follows prolonged crying. Other doors open and close along the corridor. Each click of a lock another small goodbye. Nobody says the word forever, but it hangs in the air thicker than radiation. The walk to the buses feels like a funeral procession in reverse. Everyone dressed in their best clothes, because who knows who they'll meet, where they'll stay, what impression they'll need to make. Your daughter rides on your shoulders, her weight familiar and comforting, her small hands tangled in your hair. She waves at the abandoned playground, says, "Bye-bye, swings," with the casual confidence of someone who truly believes in returns. The buses stretch for blocks, their engines idling, filling the air with diesel fumes that almost overpower the metal taste. Soldiers with clipboards direct traffic, their young faces carefully neutral. But you catch one looking at your daughter with such sadness that you have to look away. They're boys, really, conscripts probably, who joined the army to see the world, and instead are seeing the end of one. You're assigned to bus number 847. The number burns itself into your memory, though you don't know why it matters. The seats are cracked vinyl, patched with tape, and the floor is gritty with the sand and dirt of 1,000 previous journeys. But this isn't 1,000 previous journeys. This is the last journey, the only journey. The journey that will divide your life into before and after. Your daughter gets a window seat, presses her nose against the glass to watch Pripyat pass by. There's the store where you buy her shoes, the cafe where you sometimes get ice cream on Sundays, the clinic where she got her vaccinations. She provides commentary like a tiny tour guide. That's where Misha fell and broke his tooth. That's where the mean dog lives. That's where Papa works. You look at the plant, see helicopters hovering over it now like mechanical vultures, and wonder where Papa is. If he's watching these buses leave, if he knows you're on one. An old woman across the aisle clutches a canary in a cage. The bird's silent and molting, losing yellow feathers that drift to the floor like radioactive snow. She whispers to it in Ukrainian, promises it will sing again when they get home. Her husband stares straight ahead, his hands folded over a shopping bag that contains, you can see, a few cans of food and what looks like every photograph they own. The bus fills slowly. Families squeeze together, strangers pressed thigh to thigh, children on laps, bags stuffed under seats and in overhead racks. The smell is overwhelming. Fear sweat and cologne, mothballs from clothes pulled from deep closets, the sour breath of people who haven't eaten, because everything tastes like metal. Someone's brought garlic, strings of it, because their grandmother said garlic protects against poison, and the sharp smell makes your empty stomach clench. At 4 p.m, the buses begin to move. All at once, like a synchronized dance, hundreds of vehicles pulling away from curbs, forming lines, beginning the exodus. Your daughter waves frantically at everything. The buildings, the trees, a cat sitting on a fence, the Ferris wheel that gets smaller and smaller until it's just a yellow dot, then nothing. "When are we coming back?" she asks, and you say, 3 days, baby. Thursday. We'll be back Thursday. The woman behind you is telling her teenage son about Chernobyl, before it was Chernobyl, when it was just a village where her grandmother lived, where they grew the best cucumbers in Ukraine. "It means wormwood," she says. In the Bible, wormwood is the star that falls to earth and poisons the water. Her son, earbuds in, nods without listening, but you hear every word. Feel them settle in your stomach like stones. The buses pass through the city limits, past the sign that says, "Thank you for visiting Pripyat,"
in cheerful blue letters. Someone laughs, harsh and bitter, at the irony. Thank you for visiting. Come again soon. Don't forget to write. The forest takes over now. Those tall pines that have stood for centuries, that will absorb radiation into their needles and bark and roots, that will turn red and die in the coming weeks, creating a dead zone that will be called the Red Forest. Your daughter falls asleep against your shoulder, her breath warm on your neck, her weight increasing as she relaxes into dreams. You hope she's dreaming of before, of playgrounds and papa and pancakes on Friday mornings. You stroke her hair, note absently that it needs cutting. Wonder where you'll find someone to cut it. If Soviet hairdressers in whatever city you're going to will know how to handle hair this fine, this particular shade of brown that matches your husband's exactly. The buses stop at a checkpoint. Soldiers with devices that click like angry insects wave them over passengers, the clicking increasing to a roar near certain people who are quietly directed to different buses. The old woman's canary is dead, you notice, a small yellow comma at the bottom of its cage. She doesn't seem to have noticed, still whispers to it about going home, about the millet she'll buy at the market, about the sunny spot by the window where its cage usually sits. Through the window you see other buses on parallel roads, all heading the same direction. Away. It's biblical, this exodus. Except instead of seeking the promised land, you're fleeing the poisoned one. Someone starts singing quietly, an old Ukrainian song about leaving home, and others join in, their voices creating a harmony that makes your throat tight with unshed tears. Your daughter stirs but doesn't wake, her face peaceful in a way that breaks your heart. The sun is setting now, painting everything gold. The buses, the forest, the faces of your fellow refugees. That's what you are now. Refugees. Though the word sits strange in your mind. Refugees are people in news reports, people from wars, from other countries, other catastrophes. They're not Soviet citizens with engineering degrees and apartment keys and library cards. They're not you. At the reception center, a school gymnasium commandeered for the crisis, you're processed like packages. Name, age, address in Pripyat, occupation, health status, any unusual symptoms? The woman asking questions doesn't look at you, just writes your life in abbreviated marks on a form that will be filed somewhere. Evidence that you existed, that you were evacuated, that you were saved. They assign you to temporary housing, a hotel room in Kiev, 2 beds, a sink, a view of a brick wall. It's clean and anonymous and nothing like home. Your daughter explores it with delight, a new adventure, bouncing on the beds, playing with the telephone that doesn't work, investigating every drawer and cupboard as if treasure might be hidden there. But you sit on the bed and feel the weight of loss settling over you like a lead blanket. Your husband, vanished into the medical system. Your home, locked and abandoned. Your life, measured now in before and after. 3 days, they said. You look at the calendar on the wall, still showing March, nobody's bothered to change it, and wonder what day it will be when you realize 3 days has become forever. A week passes. The hotel manager, who initially treated you all with the suspicious courtesy reserved for temporary inconveniences, now looks resigned. The government is paying for the rooms, but for how long? More evacuees arrive, not just from Pripyat now, but from a 30-kilometer radius. Farmers who speak heavy Ukrainian dialects, their hands still dirty from interrupted planting. Villagers whose ancestors have lived on that land for centuries, who don't understand why they can't go back to feed their cows, their chickens, the animals they left behind. You develop routines in this non-life,
Morning walks in the park where you let your daughter feed pigeons with bread saved from breakfast. Afternoon tea with Mrs. Yanenko from your building, who somehow managed to bring her entire tea set and insists on maintaining standards even in exile. Evening calls to hospitals, to government offices, to anyone who might know something about anything. 2 weeks in, a man in a suit comes to the hotel. He has lists, information, the first real news anyone's had. He reads names of plant workers who are in Moscow hospitals. Hospital number 6, the one that specializes in radiation medicine. Your husband's name is on the list. Alive in Moscow, conditions stable. You sit down right there in the lobby, your legs suddenly unable to hold you, while your daughter pats your face and asks if Mama is sick. The next morning, you're on a train to Moscow with a special permit that took all night to obtain. Your daughter thinks it's another adventure, watches the countryside roll by, makes up stories about the houses and the people who might live in them. You hold the permit like a talisman. It's just paper, but it means you'll see him. Means he's still in the world, still reachable. Thursday comes and goes like any other day in Kiev, except it's the day you were supposed to go home. Your daughter, who has the memory of an elephant when it comes to promises, reminds you at breakfast. Today we go home, yes? You said Thursday. You watch her push kasha around her bowl, the hotel breakfast that tastes like cardboard and metal, and tell her maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday, soon, 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 that word that's becoming meaningless through repetition. The hotel lobby has become a village square of sorts, filled with other Pripyat evacuees trading information like currency. Someone heard the fire is out, someone else heard it's still burning. Moscow is sending robots to clean the roof. The robots broke immediately, couldn't handle the radiation, so they're sending soldiers instead. Bio-robots, someone calls them with bitter humor. Each rumor is dissected, analyzed, passed on with additions and modifications, until the truth becomes impossible to separate from fiction. You've called every hospital in Kiev looking for your husband. Each one checks their lists, promises to call back if he arrives, takes your hotel number with the practiced efficiency of people handling crisis. But no one calls back. Other wives are doing the same dance, calling, waiting, calling again. You recognize each other in the lobby by your red-rimmed eyes and the way you jump whenever the desk phone rings. Your daughter has made friends with another evacuee child, a boy named Kolya, whose father was a turbine operator. They play elaborate games in the hotel corridors, their imaginations turning the bland hallways into forests and castles and spaceships. You watch them run past, laughing, and feel grateful for the resilience of children, even as you worry about what's happening inside their small bodies, what invisible damage might be accumulating in their cells. Hospital number 6 is a fortress of white walls and security checkpoints. They don't want to let you in. Family visits are not recommended. The radiation exposure, the risk of infection. But you stand your ground with a ferocity you didn't know you possessed. Finally, a doctor takes pity, perhaps seeing in you his own wife, his own terror at separation. 15 minutes, he says. No touching. Stay behind the glass. You don't recognize him at first. The man in the bed is swollen, his skin dark and strange, like he's been turned inside out and put back together wrong. But then he turns his head, and his eyes are the same. That particular brown that your daughter inherited. And he manages something like a smile, though his lips are cracked and bleeding. You press your hand to the glass, and he lifts his, so slowly, like it weighs 1,000 pounds, to match it. You talk about nothing and everything. Your daughter's new friend, the hotel breakfast, the canary that died on the bus. He tells you about the treatment, the bone marrow transplant they're going to try, the American doctor who's coming to consult.
Neither of you mentions the others in the ward. The plant workers who aren't going to make it, whose bodies are failing system by system like reactors in meltdown. When the 15 minutes are up, you don't cry. You tell him you'll be back, that you love him, that your daughter drew him a picture, a family standing in front of a house with a yellow sun overhead. Everyone smiling, everyone whole. He mouths words you can't hear through the glass, but you know what they are. You've been married long enough to read his lips, his heart, his soul. Back in Kiev, you tell your daughter, Papa is getting better, needs special medicine, will come to us when he's well. She accepts this with the faith of childhood, goes back to playing with Kolya, their games now incorporating hospitals and doctors and medicine that makes everything better. You watch them run through the hotel lobby and think about lies, about protection, about the weight of truth on small shoulders. 3 weeks become a month. The hotel is now your world, its routines as familiar as your old life. You know which elevator makes the grinding noise, which room has the couple that fights every night, which maid will bring extra towels without being asked. It's not home, but it's something, a placeholder, a waiting room for a life that might resume or might never exist again. News filters in through official channels and whispers. They're building a sarcophagus around the reactor, a concrete tomb to contain the monster. They're evacuating more villages, expanding the zone of alienation. They're testing milk in Sweden, finding cesium in Welsh sheep, tracking the poison as it rides the wind around the world. Your accident, your local disaster, has become everyone's nightmare. The bus that takes you from Kiev to your new assignment feels like déjà vu in reverse. The same cracked vinyl seats, the same diesel fumes, but heading towards something unknown rather than away from something familiar. It's been 6 weeks since the evacuation, and the temporary has officially become permanent. You've been assigned an apartment in Slavatich, the new city they're building for Pripyat evacuees, but it won't be ready for 2 years. Until then, it's this. A concrete block apartment in a Kiev suburb, identical to 10,000 others, except for the ghosts you carry with you. Your daughter has stopped asking when you're going home. The word home has shifted meaning, become fluid. It's the hotel room. It's the new apartment. It's wherever Mama is. Children adapt like water, taking the shape of whatever container they're poured into. But sometimes you catch her looking at nothing, her face serious in a way 3-year-olds shouldn't be, and you know she's thinking about before. About the apartment with the orange-brown linoleum, about Papa who's still in the hospital, about the Ferris wheel she never got to ride. The new apartment comes furnished with the basics: a table, chairs, beds, a stove that might or might not work depending on its mood. The walls are bare and white, waiting for a life to be hung on them. You tape your daughter's drawings to the kitchen wall, trying to recreate that gallery of childhood art that covered your refrigerator in Pripyat. But these new drawings are different. The suns are smaller, the people less smiley, and sometimes there are black clouds that she says are the smoke from Papa's work. Other evacuees live in the building. You recognize the particular exhaustion in their eyes, the way they flinch at sudden sounds, the metal taste they're all still trying to wash from their mouths. There's an unspoken solidarity in the elevator nods, the shared understanding that everyone here has left something irreplaceable behind. The original residents regard you with a mixture of pity and suspicion, as if radiation might be contagious, as if bad luck might rub off. You find work at a local school. They need teachers, and your Pripyat credentials still mean something, even if the city that issued them is now a ghost town. The children in your new classroom whisper about you. She's from there. From Chernobyl. You become exotic and dangerous, a survivor of something they've only heard about in hushed adult conversations. One brave boy asks if you glow in the dark, and you tell him no. But sometimes you wish you did. At least then, the contamination would be visible.
manageable, something you could see and avoid. Letters from the hospital come sporadically. Your husband's handwriting, once so precise, now wobbles across the page like a drunk spider. The bone marrow transplant didn't take. They're trying other things. He doesn't elaborate on what other things means, but you've become fluent in the language of omission, can read the spaces between words where the truth lives. He asks about your daughter, tells you to kiss her for him, says he dreams about the three of you having dinner together. All the mundane beauty of before. Your daughter starts at a new kindergarten where the teacher pulls you aside on the first day to ask about any special health concerns. You want to laugh. Special health concerns. Your daughter was exposed to radiation levels that scientists are still trying to calculate. Breathed air full of cesium and iodine 131. Drank milk from cows that grazed on contaminated grass. But you just say she's been tired lately. Sometimes gets nosebleeds. Nothing major. The teacher nods, makes notes, treats your daughter like a fragile thing that might break. 2 months pass in the new apartment. You develop routines that almost feel normal. Saturday markets, where you buy vegetables from babushkas, who swear their produce comes from clean soil. No radiation, guaranteed. Though everyone knows, radiation doesn't respect property lines. Sunday walks in the park, where your daughter feeds ducks, and you try not to think about the ducks in the cooling pond at Pripyat. How they've probably all died, or flown away, or mutated into something unrecognizable.
The phone call comes at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in July. These calls never come at reasonable hours, as if death prefers to work the night shift. The doctor's voice is professionally gentle as he informs you that your husband passed at 11:47 p.m., that he was comfortable, that he asked them to tell you he loved you both. You thank him, actually thank him, as if he's done you a favor, and hang up. Then you sit at the kitchen table and stare at your hands, wondering how they can look so normal when everything has changed. You don't wake your daughter. Let her have one more night of dreams where Papa might still come home, where the three of you might still have dinner together, where the Ferris wheel might still give rides. In the morning, you'll find words small enough for a 3-year-old heart to hold. You'll tell her Papa's body was too sick, that he had to go to heaven where nothing hurts, that he loved her more than all the stars in the sky. She'll cry, then ask if heaven has playgrounds, and you'll say yes, the best playgrounds, with swings that go as high as you want. The funeral is in Moscow, a closed casket, of course. The radiation has made him unviewable, transformed him into something that shouldn't be seen or remembered. There are other funerals the same day, other plant workers who've lost their battles with the invisible fire they tried to contain. The widows stand in a line like a tragic sisterhood, all young, all holding children who won't remember their fathers, except through stories and photographs. The forest road back from Moscow is lined with birches that blur into white bars through your tears. Your daughter sits beside you on the bus, playing with the black ribbon from the funeral that she thinks is a hair decoration. She's been telling everyone her Papa is in heaven now, matter-of-factly, the way she might announce the weather. The other passengers, mostly Pripyat evacuees returning from various hospitals and bureaucratic offices, nod with that particular understanding that's become your shared language. Back in the Kiev apartment, life reorganizes itself around absence. You find yourself cooking for 2, but setting 3 places out of habit, then staring at the extra plate like it might suddenly make sense. Your daughter starts sleeping in your bed, her small body curved against yours, both of you taking comfort in the warmth of another heartbeat. Sometimes she asks if Papa can see you from heaven, and you say yes, even though you believe in nothing now, except radiation and loss. The compensation paperwork arrives in a brown envelope that feels too light for what it contains. Your husband's life reduced to forms and figures. A pension for you. Another for your daughter until she's 18. Priority housing in Slavitic when it's completed. Medical monitoring for life. The Soviet state is generous with its guilt, though no amount of rubles can buy back what's been taken. You sign where they tell you to sign. Initial where they tell you to initial. Participate in the bureaucracy of disaster. Your daughter develops a cough that won't go away. The doctor, a young woman who looks at your Pripyat medical records with barely concealed fascination, orders blood tests, x-rays, examinations that involve machines that click and whir. Probably just a cold, she says, but prescribes medications that aren't for colds, schedules follow-up appointments that suggest concern rather than routine. You add the pills to the growing collection in your medicine cabinet, each bottle a small talisman against an uncertain future.
At the market, you run into Ludmila Ignatenko, whose firefighter husband Vasily died 2 weeks after the accident. She's aged 10 years in 4 months, her face carved with lines that weren't there in Pripyat. Her baby, born 6 months after the evacuation, lived for 4 hours. Liver cirrhosis, the doctors said, incompatible with life. She holds your hand in the produce section while shoppers stream around you. 2 widows creating an island of grief among the cabbages and potatoes. September comes with its false promise of new beginnings. Your daughter starts preschool, wearing a uniform that's too big because you bought it with growing room, assuming a future. The other mothers cluster at the gate, and you stand apart, marked by tragedy like a visible scar. They whisper about you. The Chernobyl widow, the one whose husband worked at the plant, poor thing. But keep your children away. You never know. The news reports say the sarcophagus is almost complete. 400,000 cubic meters of concrete and steel to tomb the ruined reactor. They show footage of workers, liquidators, they're calling them now, shoveling graphite off the roof in 90-second shifts, the maximum time before the radiation dose becomes unsurvivable. You recognize the roof. Remember your husband pointing it out during a plant tour years ago. Proud of the engineering, the safety systems, the impossibility of disaster. Your daughter draws pictures of heaven now. It looks remarkably like Pripyat. Apartment buildings, playgrounds, a prominent Ferris wheel, but with wings on everything. Papa has wings, she explains, so he can fly down to visit, but has to fly back because heaven has rules. You save every drawing, even the ones that break your heart, especially those. They're evidence of processing, the child psychologist says. Healthy grief work. You want to ask her what unhealthy grief work looks like, but suspect you already know. October brings the first snow, earlier than usual, and the evacuee community whispers about nuclear winter, about weather patterns disrupted by radiation, about the end of normal seasons. You dress your daughter in her warmest coat and take her to the park, where she catches snowflakes on her tongue, despite your reflexive panic about contamination. The snow is just snow, you tell yourself, but you can't shake the feeling that everything is poisoned now, that the very air conspires against you. The letter arrives on a Tuesday. The Pripyat City Council in exile, because even ghost towns need administration, is organizing a memorial service for plant workers who died. They want you to speak, to represent the families. You stare at the letter, trying to imagine standing in front of people and making sense of senselessness. What would you say? That your husband died a hero? That he was just doing his job? That a safety test designed to prevent disaster caused the worst disaster in nuclear history? But you go, because routine and ritual are all that's holding you together now. The memorial is in a Kiev church that's too ornate for Soviet comfort.
all gold and incense and icons, staring down with Byzantine judgment. The other widows are there, a black-clad constellation of loss. Someone reads names, so many names, while candles are lit. Your husband's name sounds foreign in the priest's mouth, like it belongs to someone else, someone whose story had a different ending. After the service, an old man approaches you. He worked with your husband, he says, was there that night, in the control room. He wants you to know your husband was brave, that he stayed when he could have left, that he knew what the radiation was doing to him, but kept working the pumps anyway. He talked about you, the man says, about your little girl, said he was doing it for you, to keep you safe. You thank him, but later, walking home through the snowy streets, you wish he hadn't told you. It's easier to be angry at the dead when you don't know they were thinking of you as they died.
The night before leaving Kiev, you dream about the Ferris wheel. You're riding it with your daughter and husband, rising high above Pripyat, seeing the whole city spread below. But it's Pripyat as it is now, empty and overgrown, nature already erasing human ambition. Your husband points to your old apartment, and you can see through the walls to your abandoned life. Plates still on the table, clothes in the closet, your daughter's drawings on the refrigerator, all of it waiting like a museum exhibit of ordinary existence. You wake with tears on your face, and your daughter's small hand patting your cheek, asking if Mama had a bad dream.
Winter in Kiev wraps around your new life like a heavy coat you can't take off. The apartment's radiators clang and hiss through the night, a metallic symphony that reminds you of the plant's cooling systems. Your daughter has learned to sleep through it, but you lie awake counting the clangs like sheep, each one a second further from your old life. Sometimes you forget, for just a moment upon waking, think you're back in Pripyat and your husband is already at work. And then reality crashes back like a wave of ice water. The evacuee community has developed its own ecosystem in Kiev. There's a cafe where Pripyat people gather, trading news from the zone. Who's sick, who's died, who's had a baby that seems healthy, seems normal, but everyone watches for signs. The conversations flow between Russian and Ukrainian, sometimes mid-sentence, the way they did back home. Someone always has a cousin who snuck back to retrieve something, reports on which buildings are still standing, which have been looted, whether the roses in the central square bloomed this year without anyone to see them. Your daughter has stopped asking about Papa every day. Now it's every few days, usually triggered by something random. A man who laughs like he did, the smell of the cologne he wore, a song on the radio he used to whistle. You've developed stock answers that feel like lies even though they're true. Papa loved you very much. Papa had to go away. Papa would want you to be happy. She nods and goes back to playing, but you see her working through it in her games. Her dolls dying and coming back, going to heaven and visiting. The rules of permanence still fluid in her 3-year-old mind. The medical checks have become routine. Every month you take the bus to the special clinic they've set up for evacuees. They take blood, check thyroids, make notes in files that grow thicker with each visit. Your daughter knows the drill. Arm out for the needle, stand still for the scanner, open wide for the throat check. She doesn't cry anymore, just watches with those serious eyes that seem too old for her face. The doctor says her levels are within acceptable ranges, a phrase that makes you want to scream, because what's acceptable about any of this? You've started teaching again, really teaching, not just going through the motions. Your students are Kiev kids who've never seen a nuclear plant, never tasted metal in the air, never had to leave everything behind in 3 days that became forever. You teach them physics, the same physics that should have prevented the disaster, that explained why RBMK reactors couldn't explode until one did. Sometimes, in the middle of explaining atomic structure, you have to stop. Overwhelmed by the irony of teaching about controlled reactions when you've seen what happens when control fails. Spring arrives like a cautious visitor, unsure of its welcome. The snow melts to reveal a grey city that seems to have aged years in months. Your daughter finds a wounded bird in the courtyard, insists on nursing it back to health. You want to say no. You've had enough of trying to save things that can't be saved. But her face is so hopeful. You make a nest in a shoebox, feed it breadcrumbs and water from an eyedropper. Pretend not to notice that it's dying, that some things are too broken to fix.
The bird dies on a Tuesday. Your daughter holds a funeral in the courtyard, complete with a matchbox coffin and flowers picked from someone's garden. She insists on saying words, a eulogy for a sparrow. Here lies bird. He tried to fly, but his wing was broken. Now he can fly in heaven with Papa. The other children playing nearby stop to watch, and their mothers pull them away, as if grief might be contagious, as if your daughter carries death with her like a virus. Mail from Pripyat has stopped coming. The post office there is empty, its sorting machines still and dust-covered. But sometimes letters arrive through mysterious channels. A photo someone retrieved, a document that survived, messages from the dead city that refuse to stay buried. Today it's your husband's work evaluation from last year, praising his dedication, recommending him for promotion. You laugh, actually laugh, at the absurdity of performance reviews that outlive the performer. You've been assigned a flat in Slavutic, the letter says. Building 7, apartment 23. Construction is ahead of schedule. Only Soviet disasters run on time, and you can move in by September. They include architectural drawings, artist renderings of wide boulevards and modern buildings, playgrounds and schools. A city built on the bones of another city. It looks nothing like Pripyat. It looks exactly like Pripyat. It looks like home and exile all at once. Your daughter is excited about the move. New apartment, new room, new friends. She doesn't understand that Slavutic is a cemetery with buildings, that everyone there will be a ghost of someone they used to be. You pack your few belongings. How do you still have so little after all these months? And try to feel optimistic. It's designed for Pripyat evacuees, at least. You'll be among your own kind. Whatever that means now. Slavutic rises from the forest like a Soviet fever dream, all fresh concrete and sharp angles, streets wide enough for parades that will never happen. Building 7 is identical to buildings 1 through 6 and 8 through 15. The same grey panels, the same uniform windows, the same attempt to create community through architecture. But there's something different in the air here. A shared understanding that everyone is starting over, that normal is a word that belongs to the past. Your apartment is on the 3rd floor, and the stairs echo with the sound of other families moving in. Children's voices mixing with the scrape of furniture, the bang of hammers, the collective noise of life being reassembled. The flat is bigger than the Kiev temporary housing, with a separate bedroom for your daughter. She immediately claims it, spinning in the empty space, her voice echoing off bare walls. "It's huge, Mama. Can I have a pink wall? Can I have a real bed?" The neighbors introduce themselves with the shorthand of disaster. "We're from Building 5 on Builders Street. We lived near the stadium. My husband worked in Reactor 2. Nobody mentions what they do now. Only what they did then. As if life stopped at 1:23 a.m. on April 26th, and everything since has been epilogue." The woman across the hall, Mrs. Dmitrieva, worked at the Palace of Culture. She offers you tea from her grandmother's samovar, one of the few things she managed to retrieve
in an illegal return visit. The city has that peculiar smell of new construction. Wet cement, fresh paint, sawdust. Overlaid with something else. The accumulated grief of 25,000 displaced souls. The streets have hopeful names. Renaissance, friendship, peace. But everyone still refers to locations by their Pripyat equivalents. You know, where the gymnasium would be. Or, like walking from the hotel to the river, but backward.
Your daughter starts at the new kindergarten, a building so fresh the playground equipment still has stickers on it. The teachers are all from Pripyat too, and there's comfort in that shared history. Nobody asks why your daughter knows words like radiation and evacuation, why she draws pictures of helicopters dropping sand on fires, why she sometimes stops playing to stare at nothing, with that 1,000-yard stare that belongs on soldiers, not 4-year-olds. You find work at the new secondary school, teaching the children of liquidators and plant workers. Many of your colleagues are familiar. You taught in parallel worlds before, and now you teach in this strange afterlife together. The curriculum is the same, but everything feels different. How do you teach about the triumph of Soviet science when science betrayed you all? How do you promise these children bright futures when their past is a contaminated zone? The plant is still operating, reactors 1, 2 and 3 running, while 4 moulders in its concrete tomb. Some men from Slavatich still work there, taking the train through the exclusion zone, past the ghost towns and red forest, to tend the other reactors. They wear dosimeters like jewelry, compete over who has the lowest exposure this month, develop a gallows humor about glowing in the dark. They're keeping the lights on in Ukraine, they say. Someone has to do it. Your husband's former colleague Victor lives 2 buildings over. He was on shift that night, but in reactor 3, survived with only moderate exposure. He brings you vegetables from his balcony garden, insists they're safe, grown in clean soil he had trucked in from western Ukraine. His wife left him, couldn't handle the fear, the uncertainty, the way he'd wake up screaming about graphite on the roof. He understands why you stay, why leaving feels like another betrayal. Winter in Slavatich is harder than Kiev. The buildings are too new to have settled, and wind finds every crack, every imperfect seal. You stuff towels under doors, hang blankets over windows, create a cocoon of warmth in your apartment. Your daughter builds snow families in the courtyard. Always 3 figures, always with the tallest one having wings. The other children have learned not to ask about the wings. The first anniversary approaches like a storm system you can see on the horizon. The city plans memorial events, but you can feel the tension, the way everyone's holding their breath. You're invited to speak again, to represent the families, but you decline. What is there to say that hasn't been said? Your husband is still dead. The reactor is still destroyed. The zone is still poisoned. Some truths don't need anniversaries to remain true. On April 26, 1987, exactly 1 year after, you keep your daughter home from school. Together, you bake a cake, her idea, because Papa would want cake at his remember party. It's chocolate with too much frosting, lopsided and sweet, and you eat it for breakfast while looking at photo albums. Your daughter points to pictures. That's Papa when he was happy. That's you when you were pretty. That's me when I was a baby. You don't correct her tenses, don't explain that you're still pretty, that Papa might have been happy even at the end. 4-year-olds understand time differently. And maybe they're right. Years fold into each other like origami. Each crease a birthday, a holiday, another anniversary of the disaster. Your daughter is 8 now, tall for her age, with your husband's eyes and your stubborn chin. She stopped drawing angels and started drawing atoms, influenced by the radiation education they teach in school. How to read a dosimeter, what foods to avoid, why some mushrooms glow in the dark. It's ordinary to her, this post-nuclear childhood, the way war becomes ordinary to children who know no peace. The letters from Moscow have finally stopped coming. Updates on the investigation, the trial of plant directors, the ongoing containment efforts. Dyatlov got 10 years, they said, though radiation will probably kill him before he serves them all. Brukhanov and Fomin were sentenced too, scapegoats for a systemic failure nobody wants to acknowledge. You feel nothing about these verdicts, no satisfaction or anger, just a hollow recognition that blame is a luxury for people whose loved ones are still alive. Slavutic has developed its own culture now, distinct from but rooted in Pripyat. There's an annual Remembrance Day where everyone lights candles in their windows. There's a museum being built, collecting artifacts from the zone. A child's gas mask, a clock stopped at 1:23. Your husband's work badge that you donated, because holding onto it felt like holding onto poison. There are marriages between evacuees, children born who will never know the contaminated city their parents can't forget. Your daughter asks difficult questions now. Why did Papa stay if he knew it was dangerous? Could we have saved him if we'd known sooner? Will I get sick too? You answer as honestly as you can. Because it was his job. No. Maybe, but probably not. She accepts these answers with a seriousness that makes you ache for the innocence she never really had. The childhood that evaporated, like coolant water hitting uranium fuel. Victor still brings vegetables, and you've started having dinner together once a week. Nothing romantic, just two people who understand each other's silences. He tells you about the decommissioning plans, how they'll shut down the last reactor by 2000. 15 more years, he says, like it's both forever and no time at all. His hands shake now. Parkinson's, the doctors say. Probably unrelated to radiation exposure, but nobody really believes that. Your daughter's teacher calls you in for a conference. She's brilliant, gifted, especially in sciences, but she's also isolated, different. She writes essays about cellular mutation, while her classmates write about summer vacations. She knows too much about death for an 8-year-old, treats it as a scientific fact rather than a tragedy. She's coping, the teacher says, herself an evacuee who lost her own husband. We all are, in our own ways. Spring comes earlier now, or maybe that's just your imagination. The exclusion zone has become a nature reserve by default, they say. Wolves, bears, eagles, all thriving in the absence of humans. Someone shows you photos from an illegal visit. Your apartment building overtaken by vines. The kindergarten playground buried in vegetation. The Ferris wheel, still standing but rusted. A monument to joy that never was. You look at the photos once, then burn them. Some things shouldn't be preserved. You take your daughter to Kiev for medical tests. The thyroid check shows abnormalities. Not cancer, not yet, but changes that need monitoring. The doctor is optimistic. We caught it early. With medication, she'll be fine. You want to believe him, but you've heard everything will be fine before. On April 26, 1986, and every day after, until it wasn't. Still, you fill the prescription. Add another bottle to your pharmacy of hope.
The other liquidators' widows have formed an informal support group.
You meet monthly in each other's apartments, drinking tea and not talking about what brought you together. Someone always brings too much food. Someone always cries. Someone always has news of another death, cancer, suicide, the slow-motion casualties that don't make it into official statistics. You've become sisters in a sorority nobody wants to join. Your daughter finds the letters you've saved, the ones from your husband in the hospital. She reads them without permission, and you find her crying in her room. "He knew he was dying," she says, accusation in her voice. "Why didn't he tell me?" You explain that she was too young, that he wanted to protect her. But she's old enough now to recognize protection as another form of lying. She doesn't speak to you for 3 days, and when she does, something has shifted. She's no longer a child who lost her father. She's a person grappling with loss.
The train to the exclusion zone moves through the morning mist like a ghost itself, carrying its cargo of workers to tend the dying reactors. You're on it. Your first return in 5 years. Part of an official visit for families to lay flowers at the memorial they've erected. Your daughter, now 10, sits beside you, face pressed to the window, watching the abandoned villages pass like scenes from a fairy tale about cursed kingdoms. The checkpoints have become permanent structures now, with guards who look bored rather than vigilant. Radiation is an old enemy now, familiar as rain. They check your papers, wave you through with warnings not to touch anything, not to eat anything, not to take anything, as if you'd want souvenirs from the graveyard of your former life. Your daughter clutches the flowers you've brought, white roses, because your husband always brought you white roses on your anniversary. Pripyat appears through the trees like a mirage, and your daughter gasps. She's only seen it in photographs, this city where she was conceived, where her first cells divided while her parents dreamed ordinary dreams. "It's so big," she whispers, and you realize she'd been imagining something smaller, more manageable, something that could be abandoned without consequence. But Pripyat sprawls, enormous in its emptiness, a city-sized monument to hubris. The bus takes you past your old building, and you have to close your eyes. But your daughter stares, memorizing. "Which window?" she asks, and you point to the 9th floor, northwest corner. She waves, a small, solemn gesture, as if someone might be watching, waiting for visitors who finally came. The curtains you hung are still there, sun-bleached to transparency, moving in the wind through broken glass. At the memorial, other families gather, a congregation of the bereft. The monument is simple, black marble etched with names, so many names. You find your husband's, run your fingers over the letters, feel their sharp edges. Your daughter places the roses carefully, arranges them just so, then stands back and recites something in Ukrainian, a poem they learned at school about heroes. Her young voice carries across the silent square, and other families stop to listen. An old man approaches after, one of the original designers of the RBMK reactor. He's dying, he tells you, without preamble. Cancer in his bones, his lungs, his guilt. He wants you to know he's sorry, that they thought they'd thought of everything, that the design flaw was subtle, hidden, catastrophic. You don't forgive him. That's not yours to give. But you nod, acknowledge his confession. Your daughter takes his hand,
studies it like she's memorizing the architecture of regret. The guide shows you the new sarcophagus they're building, a massive arch that will slide over the old one, designed to last 100 years. After that, he shrugs, someone else's problem. Your daughter asks what happens in 100 years, and nobody has an answer. The radiation will outlive you all, outlive your daughter, outlive children not yet born. It's an inheritance that keeps giving, generation after generation of half-lives. On the train back, your daughter is quiet. Finally, she says, "It's not scary, just sad." You realize she's right. The fear has faded into something else. Melancholy, maybe, or recognition. Pripyat isn't a monster. It's a body, decomposing naturally, returning to elements. The atoms that made your life there are still there, just rearranged, transformed into something unrecognizable, but not entirely gone. That night, she asks to see more pictures of Papa. You show her the wedding album, vacation photos, the picture from his work badge that somehow makes him look like a movie star. She studies them with scientific intensity, then announces she wants to be a nuclear physicist, to make sure it never happens again, she says, and you don't have the heart to tell her that never is a word that physics doesn't recognize. Victor comes by with news. They're offering tours now, official ones, to the exclusion zone. Dark tourism, they're calling it. People want to see the disaster, take pictures with the Ferris wheel, buy postcards of catastrophe. It feels like desecration, but also inevitable. Disaster becomes history, becomes tourism. In 50 years, will anyone remember that people lived there, loved there, died there? Or will it just be a story, a cautionary tale, a destination? The years accumulate like sediment, layer upon layer of ordinary days built on an extraordinary foundation. Your daughter is 15 now, brilliant and angry in the way that teenage girls perfect into an art form. She wins science competitions with papers on cellular mutation, radiation-induced evolution, the biological legacy of nuclear disasters. Her teachers don't know whether to be impressed or concerned. You're both, always both. She's been accepted to a special school in Moscow for gifted students. The letter sits on your kitchen table for a week before either of you acknowledges it. Going means leaving Slavutic, leaving you, leaving the gravitational pull of the disaster that's shaped both your lives. But staying means limitations, boundaries drawn by geography and ghosts. You tell her it's her choice, though you both know there's only one real option. The dead don't get to hold the living back. The night before she leaves, she asks about that last normal day, April 25th, 1986. What did you eat for breakfast? What was Papa wearing? Did you fight about anything? Did you say, "I love you"? You answer as best you can, though the details have worn smooth from handling, like stones in a river. She writes it all down in a notebook she's keeping, her own historical record, as if ordinary details might explain extraordinary events. Victor dies in October. Not radiation. A heart attack while gardening, quick and merciful. At his funeral, you realize you're one of the last ones left who remember the beginning. You can trace the line from before to after without relying on documents and testimony. His apartment is cleaned out, and his daughter offers you his books, his photographs, the vegetables still growing on his balcony. You take one tomato plant, nurse it through winter, eat its fruit without fear. Your daughter calls from Moscow, homesick but determined. She's studying quantum mechanics, learning languages you never will. Not Russian or Ukrainian, but mathematics, physics, the grammar of atoms. She sends you papers she's written, and you pretend to understand them, display them on your refrigerator, like you once displayed her childhood drawings. The distance between you is more than geographic. She's becoming someone who could have prevented the disaster, while you remain someone who survived it. Slavutich is changing. The original evacuees are dying off, replaced by younger families, drawn by cheap housing and government subsidies. The new playground equipment is bright plastic, not the metal structures of your youth. The Memorial Plaza has become a place where teenagers smoke and gossip. The names on the monument, just names, not faces they remember. You've become a relic yourself, a living reminder of why this city exists. You retire from teaching, your body finally acknowledging decades of stress and low-level contamination. The fatigue that's always been there intensifies, and doctors run tests that reveal nothing definitive. Chernobyl syndrome, they call it unofficially. The constellation of symptoms that affect liquidators and evacuees. Fatigue, depression, cardiovascular problems. The body's rebellion against invisible damage. You take the pills they prescribe and try not to think about the irony of surviving radiation, only to be killed by time.
Your daughter graduates with honors, gets offers from universities around the world. She chooses America, Berkeley, California, as far from Chernobyl as she can get while still studying nuclear physics. You help her pack, fold her clothes into suitcases that will cross oceans. She promises to visit, to call, to write. But you both know that leaving is also a kind of survival. That distance is sometimes the only cure for inherited trauma. The morning she leaves for the airport, she stands in your kitchen, memorizing. "I want to remember this," she says. "You, here, now." You wonder what she sees. A middle-aged woman in a Soviet-era apartment, surrounded by photographs of the dead, or her mother, who survived the unsurvivable and raised a daughter who'll help ensure it never happens again. Maybe both. Probably both. After she's gone, you walk through Slavutich's two wide streets, past the memorial, past the school where you taught, past the buildings full of other evacuees' stories. A young mother passes with a toddler, and you see yourself 29 years ago, young and unaware of how quickly ordinary can become extraordinary, how a safety test can become a catastrophe, how a city can become a ghost, how a ghost can become a story that gets told and retold, until even the survivors aren't sure what's memory and what's myth. 25 years after the disaster, you return to Pripyat with an official tour group. You're 62 now, your hair more grey than brown, your body carrying the accumulated weight of survival. The tour is mostly foreigners with expensive cameras, eager for Instagram-worthy shots of disaster porn. They don't notice you're different, that you're not a tourist but a returner, a revenant visiting your own grave. The guide is young, wasn't even born when the reactor exploded. He recites facts with practiced enthusiasm. The radiation level here is 0.3 microsieverts per hour, completely safe for short exposure. He points out landmarks like a regular tour guide. There's the swimming pool, the hospital, the famous Ferris wheel. He doesn't mention the people who used to swim in that pool, who gave birth in that hospital, who never got to ride that Ferris wheel. People like you have become footnotes in the disaster narrative.
You break away from the group, duck into your old building while they're photographing the kindergarten. The stairs are treacherous now, covered in debris and growing things, but muscle memory guides you. 9 floors up, turn left, second door. It's open. They're all open now. Locks long since broken by looters or weather or time. Your apartment is a snow globe of dust and destruction. Everything covered in a thick layer of radioactive time. The kitchen table is still there, warped and moldy, but recognizable. The refrigerator door hangs open, revealing shelves that once held your life's mundane treasures. Leftover soup, your daughter's yogurt, the champagne you were saving for May Day. Her drawings are gone from the door, either taken by looters or dissolved by 30 years of weather through broken windows. But there, on the counter, is the tea glass your husband used that last morning, still holding the ghost of his last normal breakfast.
On the bus ride out, you sit next to an American man who's visiting all the world's disaster sites. Hiroshima, Bhopal, now Chernobyl. He asks if you're Ukrainian, notices your accent. When you tell him you lived in Pripyat, his eyes light up with the excitement of meeting a survivor, a real piece of history. He asks what it was like, and you tell him it was like living anywhere until it wasn't. He seems disappointed by this answer, wanting drama, trauma, something worthy of the price of his tour ticket. Back in Slavatich, you put your husband's ring in a box with your other radioactive treasures. His work badge, a piece of graphite your daughter found and hid as a child, not knowing what it was. Photographs that emanate their own kind of radiation. The kind measured in memories rather than millisieverts. You'll give them to your grandchild someday, these artifacts of before, though you're not sure if they're inheritance or warning or both. You sit at your kitchen table, carefully because who knows if it will hold, and look out the window at the plant. The new safe confinement gleams in the distance, a silver arch containing the old sarcophagus, containing the destroyed reactor, containing the corium that was once fuel rods that once powered half of Ukraine. It's like Russian Matryoshka dolls, if the dolls were made of concrete and fear, and the half-life of cesium-137. Your phone rings. Your daughter calling from California, where it's still yesterday. She's pregnant, due in December, calling to tell you you'll be a grandmother. The connection is perfect. Her voice clear as if she were standing next to you, instead of on the other side of the world. You tell her where you are, and she goes quiet. Why? She finally asks. You don't have an answer that makes sense. How do you explain the pull of ground zero, the need to witness your life's before, from the perspective of after? You tell her about the apartment, how small it looks now, how ordinary. She asks if you found anything worth saving, and you almost laugh. What could possibly be worth saving from a radioactive museum of your former life? But then you see it. In the bedroom, on the floor where the dresser used to be, your husband's wedding ring. He'd taken it off for work that last morning, forgotten to put it back on. It's tarnished, probably radioactive, definitely worthless. You pocket it anyway. The tour guide finds you, scolds you for wandering off, warns about unstable structures and radiation hotspots. You follow him back to the group, who are now taking selfies with the Ferris wheel. One girl, maybe 20, poses with a gas mask she bought from a vendor outside the zone. You want to tell her that gas masks didn't help, that the liquidators who wore them still died, that radiation is more subtle than war. But she's young and alive, and thinks disaster is something that happens to other people, in other times. And maybe that's a mercy. The illegal visitors started coming in the 2010s, sneaking past guards and through holes in fences, drawn by the promise of abandonment and Instagram likes. They call themselves stalkers,
after the Tarkovsky film, though that zone was philosophical, while this one is merely poisoned. You see their photos online, artistic shots of decay, themselves in gas masks looking pensive, the Ferris wheel from every possible angle. They've turned your trauma into content, your city into a backdrop for their need to feel something authentic in an increasingly digital world. Your daughter brings her child to visit, a boy named Alexander, after his grandfather he'll never meet. He's 2, all chubby cheeks and endless questions, in a mixture of English and Russian that makes you smile. Your daughter is nervous the entire visit, checking radiation levels with an app on her phone, making him wash his hands every 5 minutes. You want to tell her that radiation is patient, that damage accumulates over years, not hours. But you understand her fear. It's inherited, passed down like eye color or the shape of noses. You take them to the museum, now complete with interactive displays and survivor testimonies playing on loop. There's a recreation of a control room where visitors can pretend to manage a reactor, push buttons that don't connect to anything, play at preventing disaster. Your grandson is too young to understand, but old enough to be fascinated by all the lights and switches. Your daughter reads every placard, studies every artifact, as if she's trying to understand something that can't be understood through museum glass. There's a section about the liquidators now, their photos lined up like a memorial wall. You find your husband's picture, young, serious, wearing his dress uniform from some ceremony, years before the disaster. The placard lists his name, his job title, his date of death, nothing about his laugh, his love of chess, the way he sang in the shower, how he read scientific journals to your daughter when she was a baby, because he said it didn't matter what you read to babies, just that you read, a whole life reduced to 3 lines of text. After they leave, you walk through Slavitic one more time. It's not a bad city, really. The trees have grown tall, the playground equipment has been updated twice. There's even a cafe now that serves decent coffee. Children play in the squares, their parents watching from benches, everyone living their afterlives as normally as possible. But you know, and they know, that normal is just a performance, that underneath the ordinary is a layer of extraordinary that can never be fully covered. You stop at the memorial one last time. The marble is warm from the sun, and you trace your husband's name again. A ritual you've performed so many times, your finger fits perfectly in the groove of each letter. A young couple passes, tourists probably, and the woman asks if you knew anyone listed here. Everyone, you say, which is both true and not true. You knew them, but did anyone really know anyone? Did you know your husband would choose duty over survival? Did he know you'd spend 30 years living for both of you? Did anyone know that a safety test would unsafe everything? Your daughter asks if you want to visit Papa's grave, but you shake your head. He's not there anyway, not really. He's in the soil around Pripyat, in the concrete of the sarcophagus, in the DNA of everyone exposed, in the mutations of roses that grow wild in the exclusion zone. He's everywhere and nowhere, split like an atom into energy and aftermath. The grave is just a stone with a name, and you have better monuments to him. Your daughter's eyes, your grandson's curiosity about how things work. That evening, after your daughter has put Alexander to bed in the hotel, you sit together drinking tea like you used to when she was young. She tells you about her work, how she's part of a team developing safer reactor designs, how Chernobyl changed everything about nuclear safety. Papa would be proud, she says, and you agree, though pride seems like too small a word for what he'd feel, seeing his daughter making sure his death meant something. She asks about the early days, the ones she doesn't remember. Not the disaster, but after. The evacuation, the hotels, the hospitals. You tell her about the woman with the canary, the teenagers playing Beatles songs, the taste of metal that lasted for months. She records it all on her phone, says it's for Alexander, for when he's older and wants to know where he came from. You wonder what he'll make of it. This boy born in California to a mother born in Pripyat. This grandchild of the atom, split wrong. The next morning at the train station, saying goodbye, your daughter holds you longer than usual. I'm sorry, she says, though you're not sure what for leaving, for surviving, for being born into a life already contaminated by history. You tell her there's nothing to apologize for, that survival isn't something you're sorry for, it's something you do. She nods, but you can see she carries guilt that isn't hers. Inherited trauma that skipped the direct damage but took root anyway. Now you're 78, and Pripyat has become something unrecognizable. Not the ghost town of recent decades, but a tourist destination complete with gift shops selling radiation-themed souvenirs. They've cleaned up the safe paths, installed viewing platforms, turned catastrophe into commerce. The Ferris wheel has been reinforced so tourists can take photos without it collapsing, though riding it is still forbidden. Some boundaries even capitalism won't cross. Your grandson Alexander is 18, applying to universities. He wants to study history, not science. Says he's had enough of atoms and their consequences. He's been back 3 times now, each visit a pilgrimage to understand his genealogy of disaster. He speaks Russian fluently, learned it to read the original accounts, the ones that haven't been sanitized for Western consumption. He asks questions that cut to the bone. Were you angry at Grandpa for dying? Do you regret staying in Ukraine? Would you do it all again? You answer as honestly as you can. Yes, no, probably. Time has worn the edges off some truths while sharpening others. You are angry, furious, at being left to raise a daughter alone in a radioactive shadow. You don't regret staying. Leaving would have felt like abandoning him twice. And yes, you'd do it again because that's what love is. Choosing someone even knowing how it ends. Especially knowing how it ends. Your daughter has become famous in her field, the nuclear physicist who grew up in Chernobyl's shadow and dedicated her life to making sure shadows don't fall that way again. She gives lectures where she starts with a photo of the Pripyat Ferris wheel and ends with equations for safer reactor designs. She's divorced now. Her husband couldn't understand what she calls her genetic relationship with disaster. But she seems content, focused, driven by purpose inherited from her father. The latest health check shows what you've been expecting for years. Thyroid cancer. Slow growing but persistent, like a final message from 1986. The doctors are optimistic. Treatment has come so far. Survival rates are excellent. Your daughter flies in from California, furious that you didn't tell her sooner. But what was there to tell? That radiation is patient, that consequences compound over time. She knows this better than anyone. During treatment in Kiev, you stay in the same hotel where you first lived as evacuees. It's been renovated several times, but the bones are the same. You request the same floor, almost the same room, and lie in a bed that might be the same bed where you told your 3-year-old daughter that Papa wasn't coming home. The circle feels complete. Though circle is the wrong word. Spirals are more accurate. Everything coming around but never quite the same. You recover because that's what you do. Survive things that should be unsurvivable. The cancer retreats, though everyone knows it's just regrouping, waiting for another chance. Your daughter wants you to move to California, but you can't imagine leaving Ukraine. Leaving the graves, both marked and unmarked. Leaving the community of the contaminated who understand without explanation. Spring comes early and warm, and you take Alexander to Pripyat one last time before he leaves for university. The tour groups are thick as fleas, but you know the paths they don't take. You show him the swimming pool where his grandfather never swam, but always meant to. The cafe where you had your first date, the bench where he proposed. Alexander takes photos with an old film camera, says digital feels wrong here, that disaster should be captured in silver and chemicals, not pixels. At the amusement park, he asks if you ever imagine how it would have been, if the test had gone right, if the Ferris wheel had opened, if you'd all ridden it that May Day as planned. You tell him you used to, but imagination is a luxury when you're busy surviving. Now though, sometimes you dream about it. Your family rising above Pripyat in a yellow gondola, seeing the whole city spread below, complete and whole, and humming with ordinary life. You stand together before the Ferris wheel, this monument to never was, and Alexander takes your hand. His is young and strong, unmarked by radiation or loss, carrying DNA that's been to California and back, that's learned to split atoms safely, that will probably never fully understand what it inherited. But he's here, bearing witness, carrying forward the story in his cells and his stories. Proof that not everything ends when a reactor explodes. Tell me about the morning of April 26th again, he says, though he knows it by heart. So you do, starting with the taste of metal and the sound of helicopters, ending with buses driving away from a city that would never again be home. He listens like it's the first time, and maybe for him it always will be. This history that's personal, this catastrophe that created him through its absence, this ghost story where the ghosts are still alive, still telling their tales, still tasting metal on their tongues 37 years later. As the sun sets behind the new safe confinement, painting everything gold like it did that last normal day, you realize this might be your last visit. Not because you're dying, though you are, aren't we all? But because you're finally ready to let it go. Not forget, never forget, but release it from the urgent present tense into the safer past. Pripyat will continue its slow dissolution. Tourists will take their photos. Your daughter will design safer reactors. Your grandson will tell the story to his children. And somewhere in California, or Kiev, or the exclusion zone, atoms will continue their ancient dance. Mostly, but not always, under human control. The yellow gondolas of the Ferris wheel fade now into the purple dusk of memory, and you're back in your own bed, your own time, safe from the invisible fire that consumed so many. The story of Pripyat settles into your bones like sediment, heavy but not unbearable, a reminder of how quickly ordinary Tuesday mornings can become history. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of a world where atoms mostly stay where they're supposed to, where safety tests usually prove systems are safe, where children ride Ferris wheels without wondering if they're radioactive. The taste of metal fades from imagination back to imagination, and the helicopters that might have been circling outside your window become just the ordinary sounds of modern life. A distant car, a neighbor's television, the refrigerator humming its mechanical lullaby. Let the ghosts of Pripyat rest now, in their concrete tombs and overgrown apartments. Let the liquidators sleep their eternal sleep, heroes who contained the unconfinable. Let the evacuees, real and imagined, find peace in their new cities, their afterlives, their survival, and let you sink deeper into your pillow, your blankets, your uncontaminated dreams. The invisible fire burns itself out in the telling, becomes just a story, just history, just something that happened to other people in another time. Though the half-life of memory is longer than cesium, longer than plutonium, longer than any element on Earth. Close your eyes now. The evacuation is over. You're home. You've always been home. You'll always be home. In this moment between sleeping and waking, where all disasters are distant and all Ferris wheels eventually give their rides. Tomorrow the sun will rise without radiation, and you'll taste your morning coffee without metal. And the only atoms you'll need to worry about are the ones that make up your ordinary, precious, uncontaminated life. But tonight, you carry their story, those ghosts of the atomic city. And in carrying it, you honor them. The ones who stayed, the ones who left, the ones who never got the choice. Sleep now, and dream of yellow gondolas rising into clean skies, of children who grow up to grow old, of springs that come on time and taste like water, only water, nothing but clear, sweet, ordinary water.